Okay, welcome members of council and the public to our committee of council meeting for Wednesday the 28th. Please ensure that all cell phones, mobile and other electronic devices are turned off or placed in the non-audible mode during the meeting. Council members are prohibited from sending text message, emails, or other electronic messages during the meeting. Is there any additions, Peter? Yes. Sorry. There's a package given to you, the additions following information received by the city clerk's office after the agenda was published relates to item 5.5 on the agenda. Presentation from Kathleen Soplet, hope I pronounced that right, founder of Building Up Your Neighborhoods, member Peel Poverty Action Group, and Jada Farron, member of Peel Poverty Action Group. The following information also was received. Presentation by Sharon Vandrish, president of Brampton Music Theatre, Brampton Music Theatre 2013-2017 reconciliations. The following delegation was received at the clerk's office after the agenda was published. It relates to item 8.2.2 on the agenda. In accordance with the procedure bylaw, committee approval is not required to add this item to the agenda. Delegation from Karma Sabata, artistic director of B-Jazz, access to City of Brampton cultural/performance spaces for arts organizations. And the following item also listed on the agenda was distributed prior to the meeting. Presentation by Lowell Reuben Vaughn, Government Relations Manager of the Office of Chief Administration Officer, the legalization of recreational cannabis in Canada, and a briefing report from Lowell Reuben Vaughn, Manager of Government Relations and Public Policy on Government Relations Matters. Is there anything else? Oh, Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to withdraw from the agenda item 5.1, 7.2.3, and also 13.1.
Okay.
The reason why is because the party that is looking for to purchase the property is no longer
Through you, Mr. Chair, to add to what the councillor said, late yesterday, staff were advised by the prospective purchaser that they were no longer interested in purchasing the property.
Okay.
So the reports are no longer necessary at this time.
What were the two other items? Sorry.
5.1, 7.2.3, and 13.1.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Spilberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add an item to the in-camera, and it's in regard to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before the administrative tribunal affecting the municipality or local board and litigation matter.
So that will be 13.4. Okay, okay, thank you. Chair Bowman.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to add an item under economic development, a very brief report on the hackathon this past weekend.
Okay, I guess that would be 8.3.2. That'll be under 8.3.2. Thank you very much. No other body on the board. Are there any, before, the approval of the agenda as changed? So, Plashy, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, we're now in the consent item. These following items marked with asterisks are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the committee and will be approved at this time. There are no separate discussions of any of these items unless a committee member requests it. In case the item will not be in consent and will be considered normal sequence of the agenda. Could I get approval of the consent? Councilor Fortini, all in favor? Thank you. We're down to the announcements. I don't think there's any announcements. There's no announcements, so now we're going right into the delegations. So 5.1 was removed, so 5.2, notice of the possible delegation, notice of intention to amend the sign bylaw 399-2002, regulations of third-party advertising election signs during an election period. Is there anybody here for that? Is there any delegations for that item? Okay, then we just adjourn that item, do we? Do you want to do the report now? Councilor Paleshi, okay. Any discussion matters on it? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, it carries. 5.3, delegation from Mani Bhatti, Community Organization, Youth Advocate, Drug Awareness Society of Toronto, Safety Concerns of Cannabis Sales in Brampton. And we have items 9.1 and 9.2.8 on this seal event. Welcome.
Everybody. First of all, I just want to start off by just thanking the public service and the elected officials here for all the great work you do for our city. My name is Manny. I'm here on behalf of Drug Awareness Society of Toronto. It's a small drug advocacy awareness group here in Brampton. We work mainly with our partners and our community to essentially raise awareness on drugs and advocate for some of the health disparities that come with these drug problems. I'm talking to you today as a concerned resident and native Bramptonian. We have all been watching the rollout of cannabis legalization in Canada, and we have accepted that this will be the new reality in Canada, just as alcohol has been for hundreds of years. Okay, it's going to happen. However, it took most of a century for drinking and driving to be legalized and appropriately enforced, notwithstanding the thousands of lives that have been lost due to a problem that has only lately been appropriately tamed. It took many decades for tobacco and nicotine policies to reflect already known harmful effects, notwithstanding a generation of smokers who have died of lung cancer and lifelong smoking. It took an opioid crisis that rippled through the middle class and that currently still exists for the OMA to start monitoring and limiting the open checkbook prescription of oxycodone. I'm talking to you with those types of knock-on effects in mind. Why are we rushing this process? The decriminalization of cannabis has been set by law or will be set by law in June. But the rollout of how this occurs is a matter of policy that people like you write and resource. This puts a burden on every level of government, including the municipal jurisdictions. The onus is on the people like you to ensure prudent and informed policies are in place to ensure we limit the negative knock-on effects before they happen, not drag our heels afterwards. Canada already has the highest rate of youth consuming cannabis in the developed world, already behind the curve. What policies are in place to stop and reverse this problem once cannabis is legalized and legally sold in Canada, in Brampton? What resources is the regional appeal giving the Peel Regional Police to ensure the regulations set by law will and can be appropriately enforced without burdening the other areas of enforcement? What is the Regional Appeal Public Health's plan to ensure our entire community, especially the youth, is aware of harm that can be emanated from consuming this now legal or about to be legal substance? Given these concerns, I urge you to promise our great city that the City of Brampton will open cannabis stores only once there are sufficient policies in place to ensure the safety of our residents and children. Let's not let federal political talking points like opening cannabis sales by a certain arbitrary date be what guides our great city and the rollout of this legislation in our city. City of Brampton has taken leadership on many issues in the past, and I think that this is another example of Brampton sticking up for Bramptonians in front of big government like the provincial government and the federal government. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Manny, thank you very much for your presentation today. I'd like to suggest that it is probably more appropriate for our regional level of government, so I'd encourage you to approach the clerk at the Region of Peel to be added as an agenda for members of Regional Council. There is a report, if you haven't checked it out, it was supposed to be it is actually on the printed agenda for tomorrow. It is the Medical Officer of Health's response to the government with regard to the cannabis legislation. And but unfortunately, tomorrow's meeting has been canceled due to the death and the funeral arrangements of Durham Regional Chair Roger Anderson. So the meeting has been put over to next week. So it gives you lots of time to read the report. And I know that the medical officer and certainly the Commissioner of Health at the region would be happy to answer any questions that you might have so that you're prepared for your delegation. But I think that's the best recommendation we can give you here today.
Great, and you know, like, this issue is something that I think should be approached on all angles, including medical, but there's also a lot of social questions that should be asked about, and policy stuff that should be asked about this. too.
Absolutely, no question about that. And, you know, one of the challenges of being a two-tiered municipality here in the region of Peel is that the jurisdiction for human services and health services is managed through the region. So thank you
Okay,
for
great.
taking the time to come today.
Thanks so much.
Councilor Bill, hold on, sir, hold on, another question.
Sorry, I don't know what, I thought that was like a goodbye.
This is goodbye.
Okay, hold on a minute.
I just want to firstly, just want to thank you for coming in today. And I think surprisingly, this issue hasn't been bigger than I expected it would be. I think, you know, I think personally I'm against any form of drug. And I think, you know, too much of our youth is becoming more and more dependent on marijuana in particular. As a counselor, what I've seen is a lot of people get in fights, neighbors, because one person's smoking in their backyard and the smell goes to the other house, and they're just trying to enjoy, you know, sitting in the backyard with the family as well. And I also want to just thank you. I know the community work you and Mr. Samdo has done in the community as well, trying to really get people off these addictions and get them going on the correct path, because the drugs have destroyed so many people's lives. And I think the suggestion made by Councilor Moore might be the correct one. And so, you know, obviously you've done a good job so far. So hopefully you can go next week and make the same presentation as well. So I just want to thank you for coming in today.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Hold on.
I'm here.
Councilor Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Sandhu, for the presentation. It's really important to raise the issue and try to influence people in the. It's a very controversial issue, as you know. The problem today is that people will get it one way or another if they want it. It's just the way it is. And that's a problem in our society. Just too many people are relying on it, and they'll do whatever they have to do to get it, whether it's legally or illegally. They're going to. The concern that probably should be dealt with is this legalization. Will it entice people who probably wouldn't bother going out of their way to get it illegally? Whether if it becomes legal, it's easy to get, and they'll go after it. I think this is where we have to really focus on, because the people who really traditionally the type of people who want this stuff, they're going to get it one or another, whether it's legally or illegally, they're going to get it. And I think that what we focus on is trying to dissuade people who wouldn't normally be interested in it, that would now go after it because it's so easy to get legally. On the other hand, there's arguments on both sides. The thought about legalizing cannabis is that it gets rid of the drug pushers, these the illegal activity, and it's probably good for law enforcement. You don't have to chase after people with a little bag of marijuana anymore.
So, Councillor, I think one thing that's not controversial, I think there is that controversy side of should this happen or not, and I think more or less it's been decided for us. I think what's not controversial is should youth be consuming marijuana? Should a teenager in high school be consuming marijuana? And this is a fight I think we can all get behind. And for sure, you're right. The people that already do this stuff, it's pretty hard to stop. And I think alcohol is a good example, right? It's pretty rampant within the high schools. But I think because we're sort of behind the buck still right now, I think we have an opportunity here where we can engage this issue versus trying to control it later on.
Right. Now, just and I don't. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but is there an age limit where a legal age where they could be consumed?
Yeah, I think 18 or 19 is what they put it. as the legal age.
So are you thinking about a higher age limit?
I mean, medically speaking, I'm sure there'll be a presentation next week with the medical officer there. I'm sure he'll advocate for a brain that you know, that the brain's still developing well into the 20s. However, you know, yeah, like that's not what I'm here to. I'm not here necessarily to propose solutions. I think there's much smarter people than me that can look at this issue and propose solutions.
Well, we were hoping that the federal government, in their wisdom, would have done that to cover all the bases. Obviously.
Like I said, smarter people than me, not.
So obviously, maybe they, and I don't know whether it was consultation with the public in order before they came up with this decision or not. That maybe that's what was needed to get some consultation and get the wisdom of the people rather than the wisdom of the users, you know. And, so anyway, thank you very much for your presentation, and you know, you're doing a great job in bringing this
Thanks so much.
to the attention. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, one question. Have you spoken to the MPs regarding this?
Not specifically. This is something that, as we talked about, we will be approaching different MPs. And actually, we looked at the fact that, so did you say MPs or MPPs?
MPs.
Oh, MPs. Not MPs specifically. MPPs is something that we're looking at approaching in the coming months. And this includes people that are looking to get elected. Again, this is, I guess, a campaign that we're trying to attack at all levels. And so that's definitely part of our process. But it was very disheartening in that last week we expected the Senate to at least slow down and say, hey, look, let's take a second look at this. And the Senate didn't. They said, you know, we're good. It's a clean bill kind of thing. So it is. I don't know how much progress we'll make at the federal level
Okay.
at this point.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you.
Motion to receive delegation. All in favor? That carried, thank you. The next item on the agenda is 5.4, I believe it is. Delegation from Fazil Khan, Program Manager, Neighborhood Watch, Brampton, Brampton Focus Community Media, Re-Neighborhood Watch, Brampton Status, Sign Request, Staff Report, and I will turn this over to Chair Paleshi. This is your item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all you have for 5 minutes.
Good morning. First, I want to start off by commending Councillor Moore. There was a report in the Peel Daily News today, and so I want to commend her for her public service. I know it's a tough job that you all do, and hopefully there's a park, streets, community service centers named after you, because it would be well deserved. So congratulations. As I said, I know it is a tough job, and you have to deal with people like me, but I'm also frustrated. So what I'll do is I'll start off a quick overview of Neighborhood Watch, and then we'll get into my concern. So as you know, Neighborhood, I first delegated to you in January of last year, 14 months ago, and our big request was for signage for neighborhoods that were active on the Neighborhood Watch program, to put it on their streets. And we were very specific in our request, and Councillor Bowman actually clarified the request for us, which is for the city to pay for and install signs for residents that went through the process and were activated on the program. So the reason we started our program was because of the closure of Brampton Safe City that this council was responsible for. A year after that program started, we decided, after interviewing on our program at Brampton Focus, the executive director of Brampton Safe City, we said, well, we could do something because it is more of an educational program. So we started Neighborhood Watch Brampton. In midsummer in 2016, and then we came to council in January, in which at the same time, this council decided to start the Brampton Safety Advisory Committee. At the same time, Mississauga has their program ongoing, and their councillor is actively discussing the value of Safe City, but one program they're not questioning is Neighborhood Watch, which has proven to provide a 300% return on investment. So whatever Mississauga is putting into that program, their independent studies have shown a 300% in terms of property recovered and time and effort for police. I'll give you some examples of signs that we see around the world. The one on the left is organizations are moving away from that, especially including the one on the right, because they're aggressive. It looks like you're being constantly watched, which is not what our program is, particularly. The middle one is a little bit more friendly, and that you'll find in the UK. And then you find even more friendlier ones in the US where they're putting superheroes on these signs, just as a friendly way to let people who come into your neighborhood know, hey, you know, we're kind of looking at you, but we want to have a great neighborhood. And then in Mississauga, this is the sign they use, and you can see Safe City down at the bottom there. This is the sign we promote to residents in Brampton when we started the program, hoping we'd get something similar. Now, our program, Neighborhood Watch, is not mandatory for anybody. Other people can start Neighborhood Watch. There's no overriding organization that manages Neighborhood Watch. It's not a trademark term. It's not a governing body. The police exist, residents exist. If anybody wants to talk to us, we're here. Police refer residents to us when they don't have any other option, and then we'll work with them to get them involved in Neighborhood Watch. The way our program works is you sign up online. We have an onboarding process, which is a series of educational videos. And then at the end, if you choose to become a captain, and we explain what that is, then the process starts where we explain how to engage with residents. And so I have a couple of examples of how that is. And last time I showed you there's a door hanger that residents can hang on the door. What we're finding is people much prefer to knock on the door and leave this with their neighbors. We also have a community newspaper. We issued this in November, and we'll continue to do that this summer through the Community Grant and Neighborhood Initiative stream. And then we also have stickers that people put on their doors. And then to activate an organization, we have a community meeting where the street is invited, the police is invited, and we also invite counselors to kind of officially start the process. And that's the point of where they would be eligible for a sign. And then our goal is to stay engaged with them, let them know how things are going in their neighborhood. So if there's crime, we'll let them know. So last year, this is the slide I showed you. We had, by March, 600 neighbors registered in the program. Now, with a little promotion over the last year, because we have been waiting for these signs, we have over 1,500 households, which represent about 5,000 people, and we're actively staying in contact with them. I'll zoom down to probably our most developed street, which is Snellgrove, and you'll see, neighborhood. And there's one captain who has just taken the program and has owned it in her neighborhood. This captain applied to be a committee member on the Safety Advisory Committee, but was denied. And she's a resident Canadian citizen. On that same committee is a non-Canadian citizen. And I know that the rules of Brampton says that you have to be a Canadian. So we can't understand why our organization is not really getting the value of the Safety Advisory Committee. We'll zoom into Riverstone. I choose Riverstone here because it's been in the news recently with Councillor Miles. And I put it there because we are a resource that could be utilized to get the community out, to get them out to community forums like what happened at Riverstone. And this is at the border of Brampton, and you'll see that neighborhood just started late summer, and they're very active right now. We also get a lot of crime statistics from the police. We are a partner of them. And specifically with violent crimes, it is going up and it's escalating even this year. What is not escalating over the last 5 years anyways is break and enters and property crimes. It's actually going down. We have seen an uptick recently. And then some of the other things, and the reason I have this slide is mapping is amazing, and we have the ability to provide residents with a lot of information, and proactively. The police provide mapping for crime, but it's something that a resident has to go to. Why would they go to that unless there's something happening in their community? We want to be proactive with them and share whatever information we have. The newspaper is a great way for us to do that. We approached the city of Brampton to put a small ad when they were doing their Future Ready campaign last fall, and we were denied. We work closely with the Peel Police. We've done 7 educational videos during Crime Prevention Month in November. It was the most widely viewed videos across the province of Ontario, and no other police force.
You're over your time, so
Okay.
wrap it up, please.
Thank you.
Just finish with the closing statement.
The closing statement is the Safety Advisory Committee has decided that we need to go to the Community Grant Fund for funding of signs, which is not what we asked for, and it's not what the Community Grant Program was set up for.
Thank you, Fazell. Okay. Okay, it's been moved to more time, approximately additional 5 minutes. All in favor? That carries.
So these videos, we work closely with Peel Police, with Crime Stoppers, with Safe City Mississauga, with all the various programs that the police, their crime prevention team is doing to help them promote from an educational perspective. And we were very careful not to put Neighborhood Watch Brampton on that, not to put Brampton Focus on that, because this is what we want to do. We want to share the information broadly. And we know, our logo is viewed as political, and I don't know why that is, and over time, hopefully that will change. So we did start in the winter of 2017 formally. This spring we'll be announcing a partnership with TrackTag. TrackTag is a technology that allows us to track people, pets, and property. And it's not GPS based. So when a resident with Alzheimer's goes missing, if they have one of these tags on them or on their car, we would be able to figure out at least what direction they went to help police in those searches. And later this year, we'll be launching the Community Safety Network Hub. We haven't come up with a name for that, but it's similar to our Harmonized Hub, which we announced on Sunday, which it's a video platform for organizations to share what they do, because we recognize that nonprofits, especially in Peel Region, don't have a platform to share what they do, to share all the benefits that they're doing, especially from a community safety network approach. So we do have a letter of support from Peel Regional Police for this, and we think it'll be a fantastic program that can be in support of all the other programs, the various that the cities and the region is doing. So I'll end it with that, and specifically say that I don't expect any changes to what is being recommended by the Brampton Safety Advisory Committee in terms of signage. It's been 14 months. Even if a decision was made to somehow unwind this, I don't see it happening this summer, so what our approach is to just wait for the next council and re-engage at that point.
Thank you, Fasal. Just wait right there. We have a couple questions. Councilor Dillon.
Right over here.
Yes.
Oh, can you go back to the slides with the statistics, where crime has went up and down? Yeah, this one. Are these just is this per capita, or is this overall number of?
The violent crime data is provided annually to us by Peel Police, so this is across Brampton.
Oh, so this is, does this take into account, for example, like the population has grown, or like I meant per capita, or is it just?
It is per
just
capita,
number?
it is per capita, yeah.
Okay, so crime is.
Actually, you know what,
increasing per capita.
I would have to clarify for that for you. It's an annual, so even if the population did change, it wouldn't really affect these numbers. They're all very high. Like attempted murder is 167%. If it's 150 or 167, it's high.
No, it is high, but I'm just trying to get a grasp of if this is taking into account like population growth. Are we actually decreasing in crime when we're taking into account the growth
So
of population?
in our newspaper, there's the center spread is about crime. And the data in here is taking into consideration the population growth. So it is increasing, the violent crimes. Property crimes are decreasing even though the population is increasing, which is good news. And you don't hear that in the media, you hear the bad stuff.
That's it, Councilor Dillon. Councilor Medeiros.
Through the chair, thank you for the presentation, and it's pretty interesting all the work that you've done. It's been great work. So can you tell me, just from my knowledge, are you the only neighborhood watch right now in Brampton?
We are the only citywide neighborhood watch. There are pockets of other people trying to start neighborhood watches, but we're the only one to deal with the Peel Police. On Monday, I'm participating in the Crime Prevention Academy as Brampton's neighborhood watch program. So there are others. I don't know how far along they are. One of the things we try to do is make sure that they don't do what's happening in some places in the U.S., which is things like patrolling, things like that, right? So if we see those things, we will try to get involved and say, that's not neighborhood watch, especially in Canada.
So through the chair, there's a relationship with Peel Police then, with your organization?
It is an informal relationship, yes.
And then after, there's a couple things, if you can just explain to me, what's the issue with the signage? I know I've been tracking back and forth. So what is the status of, what did you require from the city in terms of?
We require permission for signs to go on the street. That is a city bylaw issue. We can't buy signs and put it on a street, obviously. We are trying to do what Mississauga does, which is they're responsible for signs. Now, who pays for it? We were willing to negotiate for that. If the city doesn't want to pay for it, these signs we know cost $50. The residents are more than willing to pay for it. They're willing to pay for signs on their lawns, which, I don't really like. I'd rather just see a sticker on a door. But in terms of cost, we asked for everything. We were hoping for some kind of criteria around it. But instead, from what I understand in the report, we're being pushed to the community grants program, which doesn't fund capital programs, capital cost or acquisitions. I don't think it does anything with signs. In fact, we've been told that signs is not covered in that. And then the only program we'd be eligible for is the neighborhood program, which is $1,000, and I think you're allowed 2 grant applications. So as you're running a citywide program and putting signs, that's not right. And then the hard part is, well, even if we got the signs, we can't just put it in the ground. We need the city to be involved in that process.
Sure. And through the chair, have you met with staff and has this been?
I've met with lots of staff.
Okay, so then, and just lastly, in terms of the relationship with the safety council, with our safety council, because you have significant number of residents.
Right.
So I guess you said that they're not a member, but is there any type of relationship, any type of work that, any type of involvement, cooperation?
No. I've showed up at the first meeting hoping to see a report from the city. The report wasn't ready. The report was actually supposed to be ready for council. And I was told that the first committee meeting of the Safety Advisory Council, the report would be ready then. It wasn't ready. And it wasn't prepared until early this year. And then it's a 2-page report that doesn't answer what we were requesting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Medeiros. Mayor Jeffrey.
So I'm with trepidation wading into this conversation. I remember when you came to present at the Region Appeal, and I remember, I guess you came to the Police Services Board was where you did the initial presentation, and at that time I remember watching the chief for the first time learn about the police's involvement in the Neighborhood Watch program. So since that time, I was under the impression that things had moved a lot further along, and I was listening to what you said. You said you had a partnership, you said you were working closely, that you had an informal relationship. I guess from my perspective, I want it more formalized. I want an MOU, and I don't think you have an MOU yet with Peel Regional Police. I think for me, it would give me, and I believe my colleagues around this table, more comfort that we are playing on the same deck. I like the work that you're doing. I appreciate the work that you've been doing because I think you fill a void that certainly the public wants more information, they want more transparency, they want to feel engaged in their community, and I think Neighborhood Watch programs can do that. But from my perspective, I want a more formalized, I don't want just a letter of Peel Regional Police saying you're a good organization. I want them to actually have a formal relationship with you, and I think that would, from a city perspective, because at the end of the day, if something goes sideways, the onus becomes, well, what were you doing, City of Brampton, from a liability perspective? So just to put our risk insurance people feeling more satisfied that you're not operating fly-by-night, that you are a serious organization, which you have clearly demonstrated to me, I would be happier if you worked on an MOU with Peel Regional Police, and I'd be happy to help you initiate that, work on that relationship, because I do see it as a void in our city, and I do want people to feel engaged and feel safer in their neighborhoods, and I want them to ask questions and get to know their neighbors, and when they see something that doesn't look right, to speak about it. So I know that's not the offer you came and asked for, but from my perspective, when you showed the graphic that showed the Peel Regional Police and the residents in the neighborhood, the Peel Police piece, to me, hasn't been solidified yet. And that's an important ingredient in the legitimacy of the work that you do. So I'm happy to help you if you want it, and thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Moore.
Can I respond?
There wasn't really a question, but I'll, you know what, yeah, go ahead. Because I echo the words of Mayor Jeffrey, so go ahead.
Okay, so that, I completely understand that. And if that was in the report, a year ago, we would have worked on that. We're a volunteer group. We're busy responding to residents and to take on another administrative task to appease the bodies that be. Yes, it's very important, we acknowledge that. But at the same time, I know for a fact that the Peel Police does not want to get involved in something that they view as going to be political, right? Because Brampton Safe City ended, we came up, we don't have the city's endorsement at all. We can't even go to the police. They're going to say, well, has the city endorsed you? And the police, and you're saying, has the police endorsed us? So we're caught in this, void. But I was pleasantly surprised that the chief issued us a letter of support for our project in the fall. That letter was for a grant request to the province of Ontario for a significant amount of funding. Unfortunately, that letter came a day after the grant request closed, which would have allowed us to hire staff to work on some of these things. And at the same time, the city has saved tremendous amount of money since the closure of Brampton Safe City, as well as the region. I estimated about $500,000. That's not being allocated. The Brampton Safety Advisory Committee, when it started, I was in full support of it because maybe they would help us with that. It would be a function. If they asked us, hey, you need to do this here, exactly what you're offering, to me, the Safety Advisory Committee should be offering. It's not, from my perspective, impeding the program.
Thank you. Councilor Moore.
Thank you. Let me first address the issue of perceived savings. The funding that was previously directed to Brampton Safe City has been redistributed, if you will, through the community grant program. So, and has gone out to community groups. So while it may not have been specific to the mandate and the work of Brampton Safe City, it has been reinvested in the community. I agree with the mayor with regard to the need to formalize this. And I think you heard those comments at the Brampton Safety Advisory Committee as well. And I did ask this question at the committee level, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to it again publicly. But I did raise the issue and ask you how you were protecting the personal information of the 1,500 folks who have signed up. And because there's a balance between the good work of the Neighborhood Watch program and the need to protect and the obligation you have to protect that. I was a little troubled when you made the comment today about how you could use the list to advertise a community event that was being held at Riverstone. And so there's some, I hope that you have an appreciation of the obligation you have when you take in personal information, that it's only used for the purpose for which it has been collected. And so I think that there is a risk, and the mayor talked about that, and so did you, in terms of ensuring that there is no liability on yourselves as an organization, and whether it's the police or the city who may partner with you on that, with regard to that protection.
Okay, so to address the concern, when you raised it, that's an absolutely valid concern, and I'm glad it was raised, and we addressed it. But at the same time, I did go back and say, well, do we need to collect the house address of the person? And if you look at our online form now, it's just the first name, postal code, email address, and phone number. So we don't even have the address anymore. So, because really, is there a need for this? Is there a need for maybe the captain and they get the door knock and they write out? So we don't collect that anymore. But let's not fool ourselves. This data is being used by all sorts of organizations. Facebook just breached their privacy, so I can't stand here and give you a 100% guarantee that data is not going to be leaked. Because if Facebook can't control it, well, who can? And we're not collecting credit card information. We're not collecting personal profiling type of data. We're not collecting what clicks that people are clicking on. But that is happening. Let's not kid ourselves. That is happening by organizations everywhere, all the time.
And I know that staff at the city would be happy to, you have limited resources, we understand that, but in terms of better understanding, first of all, the legislation regards to privacy and how you might protect yourselves and those who are enrolling. And thank you for your comments today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. Fazal, just a couple quick questions. With the amount of work that you guys have put into this, and you know, you're distributing material, there's obviously some dollars that have been put into this. Can you put a dollar figure to how much, you know, you've taken out of your own pocket or other members have actually put into this? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you an exact number, but it's in the many thousands of dollars.
It is. And the amount of time that you and the volunteers have put into the program?
Yeah, we're not even counting that. And if you look, it's 1,500 residents. The videos that we have, if you add them all up, I think are probably half an hour. If you add that time up of residents educating themselves, let alone watch captains who volunteered knocking on doors, and that's, you know, a half day for 2 or 3 days. So if you add all that up, a lot of resources are being spent on the program, not necessarily just by us. You know, when my father-in-law's house was broken into a week after we released those videos with police about how to secure your front door. And I felt so bad because I didn't share that information with them, because all you had to do was change the door latch. You know, even from a building code perspective, the Ontario Building Code doesn't provide any sort of security for door latches, and it's a $20 fix. So that's what motivates us, right? My house was broken into. Most of the captain that contacts us is because their house was broken into. And so we can relate, right? We know there's no support system in place for anybody who's had it broken, you know, except for the police officer that shows up and kind of consoles you. Now you got to deal with the insurance company, you got to deal with renovators who've got to fix your doors, you got to, you know, find what jewelry you had and you probably don't have coverage for. So those are all things we're trying to slowly educate residents on. So if this does happen to you, we'd like a care package. We'd like somebody to go out there and say, you know, here's some things you might want to think about. The community cares about you.
I recall, you know, when my wife and I bought our first house in Brampton, it was a new build many, many years ago, and we were one of 10 houses on a street. It was a small street, and every one of those houses were broken into, except for ours, and we were the only one with a dog. We actually had 2 dogs at the time, and you know, we never understood or never found out who was doing the break-ins. It was all during the day, you know, when nobody's home, and very targeted, and it all seemed to be the exact same thing. One boot to the front door, you know, kicked off, the deadbolt kicked off the trim. They were very easily done, and, you know, just a run and grab, kind of run in, grab what they could, and then get out in the small amount of time. You know, and so I immediately went on the internet once all this stuff was happening and tried to figure out, you know, other ways of securing my door just to ensure that this wasn't going to happen. And there's a lot of things on the internet to do, but I completely understand, you know, people don't react to, they're more reactive instead of proactive, and that's essentially what you guys are trying to do is, you know, get out there and be proactive. I don't feel that this is done. You know, I believe that there should be an ongoing relationship. I asked for this to be a standing item on the Community Safety Advisory Committee so we can continue to work. I understand your frustration in, you know, it not moving along as fast as you want it to be, and I'm of the exact same mind. Unfortunately, it's just not the world we live in. We try and continue this and move it along and push, and I think eventually we will achieve what we want to achieve, and what we both want to achieve is a safer community. So I'm more than happy to try and work with, you know, yourselves, Mayor Jeffrey, and try and get that relationship stronger, and continue to work with Alan through the Community Safety Committee, and try and come up with some ways of getting this program not only in the areas that you have, but across the city. So I can only say that. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Can I get a mover of the receipt of the delegation? Councillor Williams. All in favor? Carries. Back to you, Mr. Chair. It's back to me. Next delegation is from Catherine Soplet, founder Building Up of Our Neighborhoods, a member of Peel Poverty Action Group, and Jade Fearon, member of Peel Poverty Action Group, recognition of the 10th anniversary of 2007 Peel Youth Charter. Welcome. 5 minutes, okay?
Thank you. I'm just begging the indulgence of one extra minute. Jada Fearon is her first time here at council, and it's her first delegation, so we have our notes, but we may need a little bit of extra time.
Okay, I'll give
Okay.
you some leeway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
So thank you very much. We are here today to talk about the Peel Youth Charter, which was, and to recognize the 10-year anniversary of the charter. We are here to support a report which is item 7.2 on the agenda, which recommends a continued endorsement of the charter and to authorize the mayor to join other civic partners in signing the updated Peel Youth Charter at a future signing ceremony. So I'm Catherine Soplet, Building Up Our Neighborhoods, member of Peel Poverty Action Group. With me here today is Jada Fearon.
Hi, I'm Jada Fearon. I am a social service working program student at Humber College, and I'm a resident of Mississauga South, Mount Pleasant South, and I graduated from St. Roch School of the Arts.
Very good.
In the report, 7.2, there were some key impacts highlighted about the benefit of the Peel Youth Charter, notably that student trustees are having impact on both of the public boards, the Peel and the Dufferin Peel Catholic Board, notably that the Canada Learning Bond subscription rates moved from 27 to 57,000 in 3 years, and a focus on the future for parents and students in their schools is good for Brampton, good for the region of Peel. And that research showed that recreation and after-school activities led to better student achievement. And we also call upon other research which shows that better student achievement leads to lower crime rates. And of course, the $1.8 million in 2013 in youth outreach worker and youth mental health funding, which was brought by the Minister for Municipal Affairs and Housing, who is currently the Mayor of Brampton. In the report, Brampton staff identified the departments which delivered programs and that the topics that were covered, delivery of these programs is often in partnerships with community stakeholders. And our Brampton youth, Jadon, has some suggestions concerning transit and cycling and her impression of what the Peel Youth Charter will do.
So as a young adult in Brampton, I'm encouraged to know that Brampton Council has endorsed the Peel Youth Charter in 2007. Brampton youth need to know that the city has our backs to ensure safety, health, and education in future jobs where we live. The envision of age-friendly Brampton addresses needs for the seniors that are the same as our younger people. Youth and seniors need better access to affordable transit. As I make my chart to the path to become an adult, I attend Humber College, I have a part-time job, I volunteer, and I take part in placement. I have to travel through Brampton, Toronto, and Mississauga for all three. And I get around on the transit. I live in Mount Pleasant South, and it takes 3 bus systems for me to get to school. Sometimes buses don't run on the weekends, or sometimes they stop running at a certain time by the time I have to get home, so then I have to wait 45 minutes for the next bus if the one I'm taking doesn't come on time. And some stops don't have shelters, so that also makes me feel a little bit unsafe. And I endorse the Peel Youth Charter. I hope going forward the Brampton City Council will consider the role of accessible, affordable transit to promote safety, health, education, and future jobs for our youth. The city of Brampton is great. We just need a little bit of help with the transit.
So more reasons to continue with the Peel Youth Charter hinge to provincial efforts to make explicit poverty and education as barriers to human rights. By endorsing now and waiting for Ontario Human Rights Commission to update their code, we will be right on deck to match up with language and be available in the city of Brampton to grab any funding opportunities that may come available. Also, the Peel Youth Charter underpins the values for the We Rise Together. There are a number of Brampton schools which are benefiting from the targeted community supports with education supports to help support black male student success. And once again, we simply ask and appreciate the recommendation of the report 7.2 and look forward to a signing ceremony in the future with other civic partners.
Thank you very much. We have speaker question, Councillor Medeiros.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm also a member of the Regional Council Rep for the Peel Poverty Action Group. I sit on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and I sit on, as well, the Age Friendly Committee. My comments are similar comments I've made at the committee, and I thank you, Catherine, for your passion around this. And I guess my question goes to, excuse me, your name was again?
Jada.
Jada. So some of the suggestions you made, you would like us to come back and show you exactly what we did. Is that correct? Okay. So this is my issue I have with the charter, and this is where, to staff, these are my comments. This is a great, this feels good. We go away, we endorse it, but we don't report on this. I don't see actual deliverables. So if some of the stuff that's outlined here, some of the suggestions you made, and we really take this seriously and endorse this, I would like to see some measures on this. I would like for us to report back to you and said, you know what, you suggested that this transit, I don't know, the transit stop or the waiting that you're doing, that it's improved. I want to know that we've included more youth programs. I want to know that, so for us to be able to really take this document and make it a vibrant, lively document, my comments are simply that there has to be something that we report against. So, and this is just in general with the charter per se. I endorse it, I have no issue with it, but it's just, for everyone here in Chambers, if we come next year, or if we come in 2 years, because this was signed in 2007, nothing's told me as a result of this charter that there was actual action that was taking place, that we're actually, what's improved as a result of this charter. And that's all I want to do is make that connection.
May I make a response?
Yeah, I'll allow you for the response.
Okay,
I'll
so,
allow you to make a response.
No, you will allow.
Go
through
ahead.
you, the chair. So in the report 7.2, there is identified progress since 2007 in the city of Brampton with projects and programs which align with the tenets. So a charter is not a program. A charter is an aspiration. A charter is like the Bible. And when we assess how we, as speaking as a Christian, as a matter of my faith, I know that it's not the chapter and verse of the Bible that's important. It's the dash between when I was born and when I died to show whether or not I complied with the attributes of the
But
charter.
respectfully through the chair, Catherine, it's similar to if you read everything that we do at the city and the type of language we use, we're very all-inclusive and we incorporate and include youth as well. And we have language towards it. And I appreciate the charter, but the charter should be a call for action. And I think accompanying with it, so I'm supporting, endorsing it, but I think as direction to staff in the future, I won't do it today, that part of this, that something comes back with an actual, youth initiative or some sort of youth report that will sort of support this youth charter so that it makes it a lively document. And I think that would be more appropriate.
Can I address this?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. As the chair for the Peel Poverty Action Group, just a quick interjection there, Councillor. Thank you for the opportunity, and welcome, Chair, as well. I'd just like to say that I couldn't agree with you more. To leave a legacy for the youth, we need to live the legacy. And the 10 years that have gone by, like you said, it's just another document, it's an endorsement, but there needs to be follow-up action as well. So I couldn't agree with you more, and thank you for that. We look forward to working with you on an ongoing basis and your staff, and bringing the best, doing the best we can to bring all this, make this happen.
Sir, can you state your name for the public record, please?
It's Richard Antonio, Chair for the Peel Poverty Action Group.
Thank you. Councilor Medeiros, would you like to bring the report forward?
Sure.
At this time?
Yeah.
Because you're talking to the report. So.
Yeah. That's
Okay. So members will bring item 7.2.1. There are no other questions of the delegations?
No.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions directly related to the report? We do have Derek in the audience. There were some comments made to the report. Does staff care to? No? Okay.
Just do this.
Councilor Medeiros, you move the report. All in favor? That carries. Can I put it back to you now, Chair Willens? All right, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. We have a delegation today from Ms. Sharon Vanders, President of Brampton Music Theatre. She's here to speak to the staff report regarding the access to City of Brampton cultural performance spaces for the arts organizations. We do have a second delegation as well, immediately following that from Carmen Spada, and at that point, we will bring the staff presentation 8.2.2 forward at that time, so we can have a discussion on it. The floor is yours, Sharon.
I wasn't sure that it made sense because I'm speaking to the report, so I assume.
Well, we'll
just in
hear
terms of
the
process.
two delegations, and then we'll bring the report forward, and that way we know, we have context for what you're speaking
Okay.
to. Yeah.
And it's just to the left. Okay, great, thanks. Thanks for your time. I will need a couple of extra minutes. I didn't rehearse it as fast as I did last time I
Council's
was here.
indulgence, can we do that now so we don't have to interrupt? All in favor? Certainly.
Thank you. So I'll try to move very quickly and recap. When we were here approximately 2 months ago, there was 4 points on the table that we were coming to you about. There was the rental rate at LBP, that the city was selling a renda, that Lester B. Pearson was going to be under renovations, and the rollover dates for our musicals were going to be changing the availability. My understanding from the report is there was only 2 of those issues addressed. I think a renda is a different topic, and I think
Yeah,
it's-
we'll leave a rent. It's a
Correct.
real estate issue, so.
Right, and if I was to read the report correctly, I believe the report said that the renovation of LBP was only to take 6 to 8 months, which means that there would only be one of our youth shows affected. And I think if that's the case, that we're comfortable moving to Cyril Clark for the one show, assuming that we'll be back in the theater when it's completed. So what the report said in relation to the rollover dates, which are the 2 weeks that we put on our musical, was that BMT has experienced its lowest average attendance, which is not accurate by the show data, which I'll provide to you, and that we should be reduced to 1 week in the spring so as to concentrate on maximizing the attendance to a more limited supply. And that there was a reference to the press release, that the numbers on that press release were inaccurate. That's what I referred to in terms of the amount of attendees we have at the theater, and that there was a new set of numbers presented in that report. So how do we get our numbers? Our numbers are presented to us in terms of 2 different pieces of data. One is every few days, especially right now, because we just moved into the theater on Sunday for Beauty and the Beast, is we get daily box office reports from the theater box office. That tells us, attendance for each of the shows, dollar values, and the total number of tickets sold against the big picture, right? So if there's 800 seats in the theater and we've sold 700, whatever that number is. We also get them in terms of reconciliations, which are the financial reports given back to us at the end of our run, where we say, okay, here's what you owe for rent, here's what you owe for this, we're going to take that back, and here's your share of the box. So the numbers that were presented in the report, to me, didn't make any sense compared to the data of the shows. So I think they were altered slightly to include other data, which is not what we're here talking about. So let me explain. This is actually the box office report. I know it's small, but hopefully you can get a little bit closer on your screen. But it shows, as of 2 days ago, we're almost at 60% sold of 9 public shows, which is excellent. Also, if you'll see that we have $117,000 in ticket sales before tax. All those, the next column where it says tax is actually a lot of fees. Ticket Improvement Fund is also taken off. So 117 is the number we're looking at, coming back to us, and then additional expenses over that. You can also see, though, that the report refers to a number of 814 as being a total house sold. And that means that some of the seats we don't sell the boxes. The line of sight closest to the theater are not sold. And so we don't go by the total capacity of the theater, we go by 814. And this one here is an example of West Side Story. This is a theater settlement. For West Side Story and Hairspray, we did a co-pro with the city. This is the report back to us. You can see here that in 2016, the numbers say that we actually had 70% of the household, and you can see the numbers broken down there. Here's another example of a settlement from the city to us. Again, looking at 2017, 66% of 9 public shows. What it doesn't include actually is our students, but I'll get to that in a second. If I was to take the sale of all of the tickets sold to our fall shows and our spring shows, so you can see here we've separated them into 2 different lines. You can see that trajectory has been increasing pretty steadily since 2012, although 2014 has a spike because we did Les Miserables back then, and that was quite a very popular show, so many people attended it. So we've actually had a compounded growth of 32% over the last, I guess, 6 years. We didn't include the matinee students in our presentation before because we didn't actually perceive them as an impact on the economics of Brampton, because they come and they don't necessarily go for dinner and so forth. They just come, they see the show, and they leave. So that's why we didn't include them. But in the city's report, I note that that he did include just paid patrons. So I wasn't sure why there was a differential, but I did include it in this. You can also see that we're growing at a great rate over the last few years. With for this show, for example, we have almost 2,000 students attending Beauty and the Beast. Now, my apologies, I wasn't aware. Mr. Fay let me know that it's the city's report. I was just referring to Mr. Darling's report, but I was told that it should have been always the city. So it is in here in a few places, but it's intended to be the report itself, but the author of it is referred to in here. So there was nothing, we agree, in his report, he does say 2013, 2018, that the patrons were increasing. We actually doubled them in 5 years. So we do agree with this element of the report. If I was to take the box office reconciliations and add the paid students to that, again, we're seeing growth with the spike during Les Mis. And this didn't really seem to matter whether it was 2 weeks in the theater, 3 weeks in the theater, or 4. We're still growing and are having a great run of success with an average growth of 8.9. The next one is actually, the slide refers to the amount of rent that we're paying the city. So when we win, you win. The city gets more rent, they get more commission from our sales, they get the ticket improvement fund. So everybody's winning when we are being successful. The press release that I believe I was going from, I'm not sure if the press release was incorrect. It did say 55,000 people attend the theater annually. The report, the city's report, said that was twice that, so it was in the 100,000 area. So I was just rejigging the numbers, but in 2017, for example, still having 11% of the attendance, if those new numbers are accurate, that's still a significant number of patrons attending the theater annually that are related to Brampton Music Theatre. A reminder, as I said in our last presentation, that 13 other communities, actually I think it's 12, do provide 2 weeks for their community theater organizations in the city, and that Brampton would be the only major city that is not supporting their community theater. I'm not really sure why we were here and why we have been sort of put under the microscope, and why we have so much scrutiny. If we wanted to have more shows in a 2-week period, but our sales are still increasing, we do that because our performers want to have more opportunity, and our patrons want to have a choice of dates to come. So if one day is 300 and another day is 700, but it's still 1,000, those are the numbers that we're looking at. We are only talking about the 2-week rollover dates, but the report, the city's report, does seem to include the Arts Alive Festival, which was a festival where we included the Rose Orchestra, the Peel Choral Society, the Jazz Mechanics, and those numbers really shouldn't have been included in this, because we're not talking about having more festivals, we're really just asking for our regular time. And if we have to give that up in order to get it, there'd absolutely be no question of that. And I wasn't really sure why we were comparing 868 seats to 814. I wasn't sure, because that again changes the numbers and looks at how the numbers are looked. I don't believe this is about us failing, and that's the perception that I thought the report made it seem like we were experiencing lower sales and lower attendance, and so we should focus on trying to get more people. We are getting more people. We have doubled our patronage in 5 years. So it's unfortunate that I have to stand here again and just present the facts. They're not claims. I gave you all of the reconciliations for the last 4 years, I believe. With all the numbers are there. It's disheartening to me that this cultural master plan and the hype around supporting the arts is on one hand, and then proposing that you cripple BMT on the other. So I understand that this was not a council voted decision. I believe it needs to be. I think we still need your help in enabling us to have our 2 weeks at the theater. In all my years with the city, I've never felt that we're not a team before this time. It's not really in the spirit and of the countless hours. I know there's only a few of us here today, but actors and families volunteering their time, musicians, and everyone that I always say it takes a village to put on a show, and it's that village that gives a gift to the city twice a year with the shows, which is truly community. And I also feel like there's no winning here, because if we don't get the 2 weeks, in the spring, then I feel like we've been let down. And if for some reason that you choose to honor my request, I would feel then that we've created a bridge between, a divide between us, and that's really unfortunate. We remain open to discussions and alternatives, solutions and timing changes and costs to reach a jointly rewarding solution. As of today, I have not had any conversation with anyone from the city since my last presentation to you. And I just want to say, lastly, as I close, if someone had said to me, Sharon, this is really about money, and it's about wanting to have a higher renter in there, I wouldn't be happy with that, but I would think it would be closer to the truth and what we're really talking about here than saying it's about BMT failing. 1 week for the city is not going to make or break their bottom line. 1 week will destroy Brampton Music Theatre. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Councillor Moore, would you like to hold your question? Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. We have a second presentation from Carmen Spada. Come on down, Carmen. And again, just a reminder that this is all going to be brought forward with report 8.2.2.
Morning, members of council, senior staff. Good to go? All right, good.
You're ready to go.
Yep, wonderful. I won't take up too much time this morning, as my previous delegation outlined very clearly the challenges that artists and the arts community as a whole have struggled with and continue to struggle with in the city of Brampton. The report findings here today provide encouragement that many of the issues that I and other artists and arts organizations have expressed will be addressed and rectified with the establishment of the Arts and Culture Master Plan. I personally, and members of our organization at BJazz, have taken advantage of the community outreach programs and consultations that the arts and culture staff have hosted around the city, and we continue to remain optimistic that the amount of effort, focus, interactivity, and communication initiated by staff will continue to drive this project forward. What is unique in this process is that staff is acknowledging all artists and institutions as equal voices, allowing all of us to come forward with ideas, opinions, and insight. However, as I mentioned in my previous delegation, of which my words and intentions were severely misquoted and misrepresented online, there will continue to be a multi-tiered system of support, remuneration, and use of space for artists and arts organizations in the city of Brampton unless and until the Arts and Culture Master Plan fairly addresses these matters. For us artists and organizations who agree that this history and approach to curating the arts has proven dysfunctional, we are asking for an approach to arts funding, privileged use of space, and subsidized rent that rates and compares artists and organizations within a structure that ensures fair judgment amidst criteria such as economic impact, artistic merit, managerial skills, and most importantly, community impact, engagement, and viability. To defend municipal support to organizations based merely on years of operation without insight into administrative policies or fiscal responsibility is simply irresponsible and a poor management of taxpayer dollars. Longevity should bring managerial experience, artistic merit, and the undeniable trait that an organization is an embedded institution, leader, and contributor in the city. Longevity should not be reflecting fiscal irresponsibility with zero capacity to survive without municipal support, and it should not be reflecting organizations who have failed to establish themselves as arts leaders and visionaries in the city. especially at this most crucial time of crafting a long-term vision. Indeed, the Arts and Culture Master Plan is needed now to correct these inequalities and to define to our own city, province, and country what the arts and culture fabric is of Brampton. Arts and culture staff has reported that over 2,500 people have been consulted, surveyed, and engaged during this lengthy process, and we look forward to the amount of diverse and innovative ideas and recommendations that come forth in the master plan. Be Jazzed is proud, honored, and thankful to have been awarded community grants in 2018 in both the festivals as well as the arts and culture building streams. We do not take for granted the amount of responsibility and effort required to deliver on our programs, and once fully operational, we will be offering nearly 15 events a month, with the vast majority of those offered as free events to the general public, not to mention our World of Jazz Festival with its Saturday schedule offered completely free across downtown Brampton. Our vision at Be Jazzed is not contrary to the master plan, and we realize that a large part of any organization's identity at a municipal level will depend on building an honest and integral relationship with arts and culture staff and city councilors. After all, you all are controlling any funding and opportunities that may or may not come our way. So it is in our best interest to try and work together to determine how, where, and when funding and opportunities should be allocated, if we all share the desire to really create the Brampton that we really want to see. Now, more than ever, thank you for listening to our community. Thank you for valuing the need to create what does not exist. And please continue to strive to ensure that all artists and arts organizations be considered for opportunities based on a criteria that is fair, a process that is equitable, and a product that is honorable, so that we do not regress as an arts community or as a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Joe, there's still 45 seconds left if you've got anything to say.
I just want to echo his words and personally thank staff for the hard work they're doing with the Arts and Culture Master Plan. I can't even imagine how hard that must be to put that plan together. I wouldn't want to sit in the chair that has that responsibility. And I acknowledge that the first plan will probably not be perfect, or even maybe not even right, but at least we're headed in the right direction. And I want to, I just want to say thank you for addressing it, thank you for working on it so diligently and for creating it, because I think we all want as artists, and it doesn't matter which group it is, we want to be acknowledged, we want to be recognized, we want to have a fair system that treats us all equal so that we can all give back to the city equally.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to the presentation. Okay, motion to receive both delegations. Councillor Paleshi, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you to the delegations. Mr. Darling, you're up. Report 8.2.2.
The report speaks for itself, Council.
Okay, does anybody want to speak to the report, Councillor Moore, or to the delegations? The report?
No, I'm happy to speak to the report. We've moved receipt of the delegations.
You're up.
I'm up. Well, I'm going to move the recommendations in the report and make a few comments. I, fortunately or unfortunately, wasn't present when the original delegations were made. But I think it's important to sort of get out of the weeds on this issue. Sharon, you know I'm a huge fan of Brampton Music Theatre. I don't think I've missed very many performances, whether they're your youth troupe at Lester B. Pearson or at the Rose Theatre. But I guess for me, this is not an issue about dollars. It's not about the money. And it isn't about the numbers and scrapping over the numbers. I hate charts and with all the numbers, because they can be manipulated in any way for anybody's purpose, and you know who's trying to express their views. So it really isn't about the numbers and whether the numbers are right or wrong and who paid and who didn't pay and you know how many complimentary tickets there are. This council, I believe, have taken a very strong position this term to, if I can borrow the mayor's words, disrupt the status quo. Because really, you know, if I look at my time on council, 15 years, this city has grown by 300,000 people. And we continue to do business as if we were a community that was 300,000 people smaller than what we are today. We simply have to do business differently. It's hard not to take that personally when you've been a fixture in the city for so long, but I think our staff have done an amazing job in moving through the arts and culture to the point where we can have endorsed the arts and culture master plan. We've engaged people. There's going to be a hyphen, if you will, between the way we've done business and how we need to do business moving forward. So for me, this is an issue of fairness. It's an issue of equity. It's an issue of recognizing that there are groups across this city who feel, much like women have in the workplace, that there's a glass ceiling that they can't break through. And it's time to break that glass ceiling. I think that staff have worked hard to do this with the groups and not to the groups. And I think that's very important. And, like I said, it's hard not to take it personally when your status quo is being disrupted. But I look at some of the energy, some of the talent, some of the, I guess talent is the only word that I can bring in this community that are not given the opportunity to showcase the way they deserve and continue to put Brampton on the map. So I'm happy to move the recommendation. I understand it's not going to make everybody happy, but we're either going to get out of the weeds or we're not. And if we're going to move this city forward, we've got to be courageous and respectful at the same time to the groups that are feeling that we're not as supportive as we have been in the past. But I think that in the interest of fairness, this is the right recommendation. I want to thank staff very much for your efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Maderos.
Thank you, through the chair. And I thank you, Councillor Moore. I think you made a lot of reasonable comments, and I thank Bob for your team and your staff for the report. I guess where I'm struggling with is that we haven't finalized a culture master plan, and we have a group that has already a history, has not getting within the because this is not about us, them, or anything. It's about basically a group that's been here, that has volunteers, that has kids, families who've been part of the tradition, I guess, regardless if it's and I understand the comments about equality, but I guess my issue is, and this is what we've done in other areas where we sort of make the drastic decision to stop and leaves other groups who, they've built their reputation, they've built their roots, and from one day to the next, the world has changed on them, and we don't allow that sort of gradual change. I appreciate, when we were giving them a week, but the ask to me doesn't seem that great. And I guess another concern, and I don't know if staff can verify this, that there are groups from outside of Brampton who have rentals at Rose Theatre, or have access to Rose Theatre. And that's a little bit troubling when you have a community group understanding. I think they're be prepared for the future, and they've stated as such, and it doesn't seem to be a financial consideration. So it's I'm struggling with all this, and ultimately, and I look to my colleagues, ultimately we're talking about one more week. This group is asking just for an extra week, and if we had finalized the plan, then I would say, unfortunately, we finalized the plan at council direction. However, we haven't finalized the plan yet.
So through the chair, so what's really sort of at the crux of this, it's a bit of a supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
We're really excited about the Lester B. Pearson renovation, and we've scaled back. We were supposed to start that in September and October, but we scaled that to January not to impact their youth groups. The challenge is we're dealing with 10 groups there that are in the same situation. Yes, it is 1 week, and we agree that. And listen, we are fully supportive of Brampton Music Theatre. I want to be really, really clear on that. But this is an issue about that once you're closing a theater down, and we have other groups that need to come into our theater, and we have to move others into Cyril Clark, and others have to go into gymnasiums. So it is about a supply and demand issue. You're absolutely right. Without policy, Brendan Healy will be bringing a presentation in April outlining policy for the Rose, Garden Square, Cyril Clark, and Lester B. Pearson. So we're really comfortable about this. But we also are dealing with over 250 applications at the Rose Theatre. This isn't about one application. This isn't about us in the Brampton Music Theatre. This is about 250 of them. We're facing this challenge every day. This is very similar to recreation and others. We get calls every day for requests. So we're trying to make space accommodate, fair and equitable, and the master plan is going to definitely help. But right now, with the challenges we have of the exciting news, let's not lose sight of that, the exciting news of Lester B. Pearson, when that comes online as a really first-class theater, there's going to be tremendous opportunities for Brampton Music Theaters and other theaters. But you're absolutely right. But it is a challenging time. But just to be clear, it's not one, it's 250 we're dealing with. And there's all kinds that come to us every day.
So I guess through the chair, thank you, Bob. Through the chair, if we did add an extra week, that would, you're saying, have impact on 10 other groups, and they would be required to go to different spaces, and so we'd be trying to, I guess, find space for them. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely, through the chair, absolutely. And it's not just the 10, there's more coming every day. It's a standard situation we deal with every day, and our responsibility to be fair and equitable.
And I guess through the chair, in terms of Brampton, do we have some form of policy that we give priority to Brampton community-based organizations? Or is that not in our policy?
So through the chair, again, what I mentioned, Brendan Healy will be coming back in April with a full policy, something that has never existed in the city, policy on the theaters, all our theaters, and this will fit nicely into our culture master plan. So we feel we're on a good path, but we need a bit of time just to prepare as everything's lining up over the next couple of months.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Medeiros. Councillor Moore, you're back on.
I am, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Medeiros, for raising the issue of perhaps people outside the municipality using. I will say that, you know, an organization that we're all familiar with, Jade's Hip Hop, highly successful. They're not able to use the Rose Theatre, they go to the Living Arts. So I think there is that rotation of groups that find a cost and a venue that most suits what they're doing. I know that the Rose is probably not large enough for Jade's Hip Hop when they have their end of year graduation or whatever I know I've had a chance to go. It probably has a special name, but it really is amazing. But you know, so I do think that we share around. And what's important to note is on slide 5/6-14 in Sharon's presentation today, it lists a number of theater organizations. You don't see the Rose Theatre on there, or the Living Arts Center, or those iconic theaters that are in those municipalities. They're community theaters, whether it's the one in Meadowvale or Scarborough or Mississauga. So, you know, I think it's important to recognize that other cities are doing better than we are. But I think we certainly have recognized and have the aspiration to do better. So my point was really just to Mr. Darling made reference to the 250 applications. I mean, it is a balancing act. Oh, do we have a different rate for outside organizations? We do?
Through the chair, our current rate fees at Rose Theatre are classified in 4. So we have a community rate, we have a nonprofit rate, we have a dance rate, and we have a commercial rate. So there isn't a distinct resident versus non-resident, but there is nonprofit community rates versus a commercial outside rate.
It's interesting because I know conversations that I've had with Jade from Jade's Hip Hop is that the Living Arts Theatre was cheaper for her to rent than our own facility here at home. So that's why I asked about ours, plus Councillor Palashi was poking at me to ask that question. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore and Councillor Palashi. Okay, we have the report in front of us. Councillor Moore has moved the report and its recommendations. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the delegates for coming in this morning. With that, I will pass the chair back over to Chair Willens.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowman. We'll maybe wait for a couple minutes so that people leave here. Peter, who's going to do Councillor Miles? Yeah. I'm waiting for the people to clean up. Right? Okay, thank you very much. We are now on to the Public Works and Engineering section. We have no staff presentations. The first 4 reports are in consent. There is a 6.2.5 report from Traffic Operations, Public Works and Engineering, dated January 18th, 2018, re special event road closures for Rotary Rib and Roll, May 25th to May 27th, 2018 in Ward 3. Is there any questions on that? Could I get one of the Ward 3 thanks? Councillor Bowman, moves forward. All in favor? Thank you very much. That carries. There is 6.3 is in consent. There's no correspondence. Any council questions on Public Works? No, seeing none. Then I will pass it on now to Councillor Palashi for the Community Services section. Do you want a 10-minute break? People want a 10-minute break? Okay, 10 minutes. Be back here at 11:10. Yeah.
So it is as is. Okay, so that's done. Okay. Okay, perfect.
That's under Michael's.
Welcome, everybody, to the Community Services section. I already did the count, Peter, thank you. We have a staff presentation, item 7.1.1, Brampton Fire Emergency Services. Update, Billy Boys. Billy, welcome. Chief, I mean, sorry. Whenever you're ready.
Through the chair, just before we start, members of the team are joining me here, but I do want to thank Mayor and all the councilors for all your support over the past week. We lost one of our firefighters, while you're reaching out condolences, and all meant a lot to the family, so thank you. And even yesterday with the accident, which our chief was in, so that does mean a lot, so thank you very much.
And how's the district chief today?
He's doing well. He's released from the hospital, so positive prognosis, and we will be getting back to work soon.
Excellent.
Very good news story. So through the chair, Mayor, members of the committee, I brought to my team members here, no particular order, our manager, emergency management, Alana Lynn, Kara Ferrer, Division Chief Administrative Services, Deputy Chief Jim King, Assistant Chief Andrew Von Holt, Deputy Chief Peter Gatto, and our fire and life safety education officer, Phil Schuster. The whole team will be today.
Excellent.
Today we got a busy agenda. We have a number of slides, so I'm going to walk through some of our stats a little bit quickly, but I am happy to speak to them at any time.
Can we have your team sit down then?
So we do have, in Brampton Fire Emergency Services, we have over 500 staff, and we have 8 different positions that help us fulfill a variety of responsibilities in the community. So as we're looking at our department and where we're going, there's some key tenets that are driving how we go forward. We are going to be focused on public safety excellence for our organization, and to do that, we're going to be focused on community risk reduction and using the 3 lines of defense model. So the 3 lines of defense, you'll hear me speak about that, but it's really using public education, fire prevention, coupled with emergency response to keep communities safe. And we're going to do this, we're going to embrace innovation, we're going to leverage data analytics, and we're going to implement sustainable change. We do want to become the modern, diverse, inclusive public sector organization with strong partnerships both internally, the rest of our city development here at the table, and also externally in the community. So by doing this, is that we can meet the growth demands of the city and be ready to serve that community for the future of 900,000. Response time metrics are improving, fires are decreasing, and our large loss fires, one way that we measure the impact of fires, is actually remaining constant despite the significant population growth. Our Joint Fire Communication Center, so we look after Mississauga Fire, Brampton Fire, and Caledon Fire, and we dispatched 58,000 emergencies based on 164,000 incoming calls. So if any of you, I know some of you have had a chance to be down there and see it, it is quite an extensive operation. And one thing that we're very proud of, our performance objective is to process calls in less than 64 seconds, 90% of the time. We did that each and every month with a high actually of 48 seconds and a low of 39 seconds 1 month. So we are well under that standard, something that we're very proud of. And as you can see, we responded to 24,320 emergency incidents last year. So we're very busy in the fire department. In terms of our annual response time performance, under the NFPA standard, it's 384 seconds. For the first arriving apparatus, 90% of the time. We're able to achieve that 79% of the time. And as you can see, from 2012, that has been increasing, which is something that we're very proud of. And I will thank council for the investment in our fire department to allow us to have this response time performance right now. So 79% is a very positive number. If you look at our annual incident counts, you can see too, from 2010 at 16,782 incidents, all the way to 2017, we've increased now to over 24,000 emergencies that we respond to each year. And that is increasing as expected with the growth in the population. In terms of our incidents by category, you look at the majority of our incidents that we respond to are medical related emergencies. You'll see that's 56% of the time, followed by accidents, motor vehicle collisions, and rescues at 15% of the time. Our fire and explosion data is 2%, and we will delve into that here as we go forward. So fire and explosion related incidents, it's actually our lowest number in 8 years. So right now, we're in 2017, we experienced 489 of those incidents, so a decrease of 112. And so a significant decline over 2016. Now, as we get a little bit deeper into that analysis, if we look at actual structure fires in residence, you can see that we experienced a decline of 7.86% in 2017, which is a very good news story for 129 residential structure fires. So it may seem, I know we do update council on a regular basis of the fires that are going on, and we try to be very proactive at that. But as you can see, the numbers are trending in the right direction, and this is very positive given that our city is growing at such a rapid rate. Like most municipalities, the majority of fires happen in the home. 45% of the structure fires do happen in the home, followed by vehicles, land, air, and water. And then lastly, with structures not classified, so something like a shed or something like that matter. But the majority of fires happen in the home, and that is why you'll see in our future part of the presentation here, we are focused on community risk reduction through public education and fire prevention. This slide, if you can take a moment to look into, I think it's something that's important. And so what we did with this was we classified our fires into 3 different groupings. So a low loss fire, we'll call it $0 to $10,000 in loss, a mid-range loss of $10,000 to $100,000, and then a large loss fire of over $100,000. And as you can see, the numbers, they remain from 2010 to 2017 of large loss fires relatively consistent. So that is a positive news story, despite with our city growing and the population growing, we're able to maintain those large loss fires. And that's a result of public education, fire prevention, timely response, and then also some new tactics that we put in place with our firefighters that they're training on. So it's a combination of all those factors to minimize those large loss fires, something that we're proud of. Civilian fires, fatalities, and injuries. So you'll see in 2017, we did experience a higher number of deaths. 3 of those were the result of the Madison Street fire. So our goal each year is 0 deaths, and that will continue to be our goal as we go forward, as we do our public education and fire prevention activities and our emergency response. In terms of fire prevention is an extremely busy division. They closed almost 2,000 files last year, and the majority of those were the result of complaints and or requests for inspections. As you'll see, fire prevention and public education in this presentation is undertaking a number of new positive initiatives. So strategic projects going forward. So it is necessary to look back, and that's what I wanted to show council today, but I think it's also very important to look forward to see where we're going. We have 4 significant departmental projects next year that we're undertaking. One of them I spoke about 3 weeks ago, at council, a community risk assessment. So that's going to be required by the province by 2024. We're going to hope to have that done with our master plan in 2019. So that's something very positive that we're looking forward to. In terms of diversity and inclusion, we're really looking at building some strong connections with the community, a number of different community groups. We really want to have strong partnerships and demonstrate that this is a great career that anybody in the city from any different group or background would like to be a part of. So we're really working on that and have a major focus on, excuse me, the fire campus. So we thank you again to council for the support in the last budget to move the campus forward. That's going to be an exciting opportunity where we look to basically change how we work and really do some innovative strategies here to change the workplace, change how we bring everybody together, and I think ultimately be more efficient and innovative. So it's going to be a very exciting opportunity. Community risk reduction. So here's the 3 lines of defense model that I was talking about. If you look at this is something that fundamentally I believe in, and it's how we improve public safety. And it's guiding using public education, fire prevention, and emergency response to help make the community safer. So this is going to inform a number of our programs that we're going forward with here. Our innovation strategies and tactics that we're using, the talent learning management system, we're going to implement that this year, the first in the corporation. I'm just going to grab some water here if you don't mind. Thank you. So the TLMS, we call it, so that's going to revolutionize how we deliver and develop training. It's fantastic. As I said, we're the first in the corporation, something we're very excited about. Fire apparatus equipped with tablets. I believe that's the new tool for firefighters. If you see a fire truck nowadays, the ability to access information is so important. By having this tablet on the back for firefighters to use, I think it's going to help make our firefighters stronger and safer. So fire prevention, a proactive inspection program, high-rise and industrial occupancy. So this is something that we're going to do proactively, something that is groundbreaking, something that is not done, excuse me, in a lot of municipalities. So if you look at our fire and life safety education innovations, again, that focus on public education, using the geographically targeted advertising and safety messaging. Facebook hot zone areas, I will have Phil come up and probably explain what a Snapchat filter is. For those of you who don't know, I'm still a little unfamiliar with it, but it's the way of the future. It's how we connect with young people in the community and make them safer. We're going to be educating all students in the hot zone areas. Every year, they'll be visited by a fire life safety education officer. And finally, promoting fire safety messaging with fashion retailers, using American Eagle, using Old Navy, having that available in the change rooms. So very, very cool. So the hot zone program, I'm actually going to bring up, if you don't mind if I bring up Phil. Phil's going to help walk me through the hot zone program here. So this is a fantastic initiative, and this is where we've taken 5 years of data, right, and we've found a higher incidence of fires in those areas. So these areas, City Center, Ridge Hill, Spelling area there, Armbro Heights. So we've educated and trained all fire crews now?
Yes.
In those areas, as you can see. So it's a very cool initiative. I'll let Phil kind of explain where these are and how that worked.
Okay, so your City Center Hot Zone Area Council is essentially you're looking at the Bramley Road across to south on, I guess, a little north. Basically, yeah, Bramley City Center area, west to Dixie. And why this hot zone was identified, we ran some analysis through our ArcGIS systems and realized that in a concentration of a 2-kilometer radius, it was one of the highest incident rates in the last 5 years. So you do have a lot of mixed-use housing in there. You do have high-rises with some, older semi-detached and detached dwellings. So that immediately popped up right away in terms of one of the highest percentages of incidents.
So that area there, the majority in Ward 5, population of almost 40,000 people, and we had 75 fires occur there in 5 years. Whereas you look at Ridge Hill, the Ridge Hill area, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me mix that one up. Ward 7, sorry, we're coming to Ward 5 here in a moment. Ward 7 with a little bit in Ward 8 and Ward 3. In terms of the Ridge Hill area, here we are 8.4 square kilometers, and that is a population of almost 40,000 people. And there were 75 fires in this ward, which is mostly Ward 5 and a little bit in Ward 1. Phil, the Armbro Heights area here, you'll see, is another area in the city here. That is served by our, I believe that is Station 6,
yeah.
Majority, Station 6. Yeah. A population of over 50,000 residents. So 77 fires in those 5 years and 11 square kilometers. So you can see that by targeting these 3 areas, we're going to be able to help reduce the the impact of these fires and hopefully reduce the total number. One of the ways, in addition to this hot zone program, is targeted public education messaging on our fire trucks. And if you look at the picture here, you'll see that this messaging on the back is specific to the people and the demographics in that area. So to really target our risk reduction efforts. So something I think that's really innovative and really cool. And the last program that I wanted to unveil today was our response to the opioid crisis. So we've worked with our medical directors, Mississauga Fire, Brampton Fire, and Caledon Fire, to put together a plan to how do we respond to this. And as you can see, in Peel Region, emergency room visits tripled from 17 to 164 from 2003 to 2015. Peel paramedics in just a 4-month span administered naloxone 39 times in Brampton. And finally, Peel Region has a lower opioid-related incident rate, but a larger percent change. So to combat this, in working with our medical director and our surrounding fire services, we put together a training plan that we trained all staff on. We're just completing that right now. And we're adding naloxone to all fire apparatus, and that's gonna start about middle of this April. And then as we go forward, we will track and share that information with our medical director and our surrounding fire services. So just to conclude, one thing that we're really proud of, I'm very proud of our team and the role that they play in the community and how safe we make the community, but they're also very involved in the community. Something I think that's really important, and you can see here by the list of charities that we're involved in. something that we are extremely proud of and something that we will continue to do. And as you can see, there's a great picture to finish up with here that kind of showcases just some of the events and the opportunities that we're involved in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. We have a list of speakers. Councillor Fortini.
Through the chair. Thank you, Chief, and all.
I'll bring my team up here because there may be some, I'd like to let them come on up with me here. I'm proud of these guys. They do a fantastic job, so it's been a tough week for everybody.
So thank you for the report and for all the department and the hard work you guys do, and I know it's very hard. I'm going over on the electrical part, most of the fires. Do we have any training for these homes? Like, a lot of them are aluminum wires. It's a quick fix. And I've gone in places where they still have the old fuses, which now is a new click fuses, very easy to break. But a lot of them on the breakers, you end up having a 20 amp or 30 amp breaker because they say, well, while my kettle's on and the blow dryer's going on, the breaker goes off, so they kind of lift it up, and that's where most of the fires happen. So is there anything like we could do for those?
Well, maybe turn prevention, just from a prevention standpoint, so there would be fire code implications with that, as there would be building code implications. We do train our firefighters on electrical-based firefighting, but we would enforce that as part of the fire code when we do any inspections. If we had a request, a complaint, or we were in a building and something like that, we would definitely put an order together, and then they would have to change that.
So we have the authority, because I know that like the electrical has nothing to do with our city.
Yeah, yeah, we have the ability through an inspection order to rectify that, to make it safe.
Right. And because a lot of the aluminum wires, what ends up happening is they get soft and it gets loose, and you can actually hear it, you know, like in the panel, they sizzle. So it's really a quick fix, but in the plug itself, like most of those aluminum, they have those, it's very easy. People are thinking it's going to cost thousands of dollars, and they don't want to do it. This is where most of the fires really happen, in those older homes. When they plug into there and everything moves, and they got 3 plugs on one, and it heats up, and the wood is dry, and it's just the way it goes. So,
I just preface that to make sure they have a certified electrician.
Yeah, so, you know, that's why I think if we educate them and tell them that it doesn't cost a lot, it's like maybe $200, $250, you could do a whole house, change your whole plugs, and get the right morettes with the grease in, just tighten them up, and it's very simple and easy. We don't have to change all the wiring.
Yeah, and the majority, back to the statistics, majority of the fires are from cooking or discarded, improperly discarded smoking materials. That's where we probably see 75% or more of our fires in that area, and we really target our public education safety messaging in those areas to try to combat those problems. But yes, it's another concern that people have to be aware of.
Thank you so much for all you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Sprovier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chief, for the presentation. I was going to ask the question as to what are the most fires in this area that are the hot spots? What are they caused by? And you just give us the answer.
Yeah, unattended cooking is the primary one, and then also we see a number of fires in garages as well.
From people using burners for cooking?
In the garages, I would imagine that improperly discarded smoking materials would be the majority of those garage fires.
Oh, somebody throws their lit butt in the garbage.
In the garbage can, and there's, combustibles in there, and then it would start a fire.
Just pure
barbecuing and cooking also in garages as well. Yeah, as the staff was mentioning. So that's another thing to make sure you do that outside and not inside a building.
Yeah. Through the chair, the main question I had for you is, I saw the chart that most of the calls, the large percentage, 70% are emergency related to medical.
56% last year.
How much?
56%.
56%. Now, when the calls, somebody calls emergency 311 or 911, sorry.
Yeah.
So the police show up, the ambulance show up, and the fire shows up. I believe they all show up there for the emergency.
Potentially, it depends on the nature of the emergency, but if it's a medical emergency, fire would show up followed or closely thereafter or before by ambulance.
So do you, what sort of equipment do you send out for the medical emergency? Do you send out the whole fleet? I mean, not the whole fleet, but all the components of your equipment, or just specific equipment to deal with medical emergencies?
So we send out our pumper apparatus or our primary frontline apparatus. It could be an aerial. Any one of our frontline typical fire trucks that you would see, and they would carry medical equipment on it, and they would respond to that medical emergency.
So you have no other vehicles that can, like a large SUV that's fully equipped for medical that you can send out rather than send out the big equipment?
No, we send the fully staffed and a truck with medical equipment and fire equipment on it to that call.
So everything's in there, so people jump in and off they go?
Yes, our staff would go.
So through the chair, is that the appropriate equipment to really send? Because to send out that kind of equipment out just for a medical emergency, people may see that as an overkill. The public may see it as an overkill. Why send out such large equipment for a medical emergency?
One thing with the way we staff and situate our trucks and stations in the city of Brampton is for our core business, which is fire response. So that has to be laid out so we can meet our 240-second travel time, meet our NFPA standards. And by having that laid out, we are able and have the ability to put some medical equipment on the fire truck and then respond to those calls. And then on the way back, we are available for another fire incident should it happen if required.
I see. So I know it's been done that way, but it just, to me, it seems that, even to me, it seems that sending out such a large equipment, maybe there's an opportunity to design a different kind of product to respond to medical emergencies, specifically to medical. Does any other jurisdiction in North America or Europe have any other type of equipment for response for that purpose, or everybody does the same thing?
In general, there is some different response models, but some of them have different emergency medical systems as well that impact their response models. So it is a bit of a different scenario than would occur here in Ontario.
Because the reason I ask that is because if you had a smaller equipment, you could probably get there faster than some of these large vehicles. You can release them along like an ambulance type of vehicle.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the exact statistics, whether you can get there how much faster or if you can faster, but potentially that could happen.
Yeah. Just a question to see whether other people are doing it differently or whether it's everybody across North America, whether everybody's doing it the same or just 90, so just through the chair, you say that there are different models out there?
There's different EMS models. Some places have fire-based EMS. We do not have that in Ontario. Emergency medical services delivered by the region, whereas we deliver the fire services locally. So there's some different services where that happens, but it depends on the jurisdictions involved.
I see. Okay. Thank you for the good.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good job, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Provieri. Councillor Bowman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I've had the distinct pleasure of being on rides, being in full gear with you guys, and I'm glad you guys do it because it's a heck of a job. And the union and the firefighters that we've got up there, they should probably be standing down here with you. I've always maintained we have the best fire service and EMS in Canada, bar none. So congratulations to all of you because you're all a big part of that. One thing that Councillor Sprovieri touched on there, and a lot of people wonder about, is why a fire truck is the first person or the first vehicle to arrive at a car accident. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So in terms of, again, how we're set up through the city, how we're geographically distributed, we have our response time mandates that we are attempting to meet. So we respond to those motor vehicle collisions just because we're set out so quickly, and we usually will send 2 apparatus to that. And one of the apparatus will get there and start the initial patient care and stabilization of the vehicle, and we have another apparatus, specialty ones throughout the city if required, to actually extricate the patient. So they'll have special tools on there, and they're again distributed throughout the city so that we can get them there in a timely manner, but they have a little bit different equipment on them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I saw was securing the scene so that if a fire does break out in the accident, you're already there.
Yeah, there's fire suppression, patient care, actually stabilizing the vehicle, dealing with any other vehicles that may be involved as well, blocking the roadway, all that stuff to make the scene safe.
Okay, good. Bill, what's the other response, 10%? What sort of things might be included in that? Like, that's not getting a cat out of a tree or anything like that, is it?
I do have that right here. So
Oh, it
other
is.
response, that would constitute, so assisting police, assisting other agencies, calls that may be canceled en route, assistance by another agency, maybe that would be hydro or gas or some agency, mutual aid or automatic aid, so if we had to go assist another fire department. So that constitutes the majority of that category.
Okay, and then there's a total of 12% for false calls. That's pretty high. Does that compare roughly with other jurisdictions, that there would be that many?
Yes, I would say that's probably a standard number that you would see across the municipalities that I know. Some would maybe be higher than that.
Okay, because that does take up a lot of time. I was actually on one with you when you were on that,
Yes.
when we went there, so. And the last thing is, we've got a great education system going. One thing that I notice, and probably a lot of other people notice, there is still cars on the road that do not understand to get the heck out of the way when the fire truck is coming. What can we do as far as further education to make sure that we open up that laneway as quickly as possible?
I think that's just another component of our public education, right? Along with police and emergency medical services, when you see an emergency vehicle, to stop, pull over to the right and stop, and allow us to pass. And,
Yeah, because I see people, they just continue driving. Sometimes they pull over and they immediately try and get as close as they can behind you guys to get through the lights in time, and it's just crazy out there. So hopefully we can do a little bit more education on that. But phenomenal job. Thank you so much for what you do for the city.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I'm not sure I like the fact that your report is saying that people in wards 1 or in 5 and 7 are bad cooks. I'm fine with that. On a more serious note, you mentioned the area around Bramalea City Centre and the multi-residential, the high density in that area. And I think there's sort of a lesson to be learned in this. We're, pushing for intensification along the Queen Street corridor and in the downtown. And I think that presents some challenges, maybe not while it's new housing stock, but as that housing stock ages over time. So I think the work that you're doing is really valuable in terms of planning your resources, planning the education piece that's going to support your efforts as that intensification happens, as it grows across that corridor, and as the city grows in that type of housing. So I think this is amazing, really. The way that you're able to track it like that. On the issue of the opioid, I'm really proud that you've taken that step. I've had to deal most recently with a safe injection site in my area. And, it's interesting that there is a lot of sympathy and understanding around the need to do something for that. And I think that we're going to have to get our heads around, as a community, how we support saving those lives. One of the reasons I feel particularly passionate about that, I had a call in my office from a father whose son was addicted to opioids. And I think we draw certain conclusions around the individuals who find themselves with that addiction. But he told me the story about how it happened with his son, an athlete, by every definition, a great kid, who had a serious sports injury and ended up in the hospital with some surgery. As a result of that, ended up addicted to opioids. And so I think we owe it as a community to do all we can to make sure that his son lives another day and gets the help that he needs at the time that he's ready to receive that help. So I really commend the work that you do in fire and emergency services. It's a tough job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Dillon.
Thanks so much, Chief, to you and the rest of the team for the presentation. Just a quick question, a couple quick questions. When is Fire Prevention Week?
When Fire Prevention Week is in October, I believe, but on the exact dates, it's like roughly the first week, right?
Yes. First week, okay.
First week of October.
And the second question is, I know, it's actually a serious question. I know that I remember when I was in high school, last week of school, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day, somebody would pull the fire alarm.
Yes.
Would you say that, I think it's 12% that you said?
It's
Was it- is
9%
that-
for false fire related,
Okay.
and false CO would be about 3%.
All right, is that still a problem within the Brampton High Schools?
Maybe I'll ask our building expert if we have any, I don't off the top of my head know if we, schools are more dominant.
No, they're not an alarming number in the schools. Wherever we do see an alarming number at the same property, we do work with our fire prevention division to proactively send out a fire prevention officer to look into the matter further so that we can prevent recurrences of the same incident occurring.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Mayor Jeffrey.
This is intimidating to have all your team here, but it's a good thing. I just wanted to say how much I appreciated in your flow chart of your departments, whether it's firefighting and training, administration, to have emergency management to be part of this is a relatively new phenomenon for the city of Brampton, and I feel the difference. I feel it's so much better. It seemed to be an outlier before. It makes much more sense. So I really appreciate it, and I noticed that it's there. I wanted to suggest that, I know you're working on your fire master plan, or you have something in progress.
Yes.
You might want to think about doing some outreach to Ryerson University in your fire master plan. The reason I say that is public safety is so much part of what you're doing in community safety, and really what Ryerson is looking at in the future is a public safety focus with the cybersecurity expertise that they want to bring to our city. So whether it's Peel Regional Police or the banking sector or healthcare, fire should be part of that conversation. So I wanted to make sure that at least, and I think Mr. Sagan could probably connect you with who that right person would be, but it should be integral to what you're doing, and I just wanted to make sure that you explored it, because I think a lot of those analytics you're already producing are part of that conversation, but you're using a lot of internet and data, and that hacking piece is a vulnerability that will really slow you down if it isn't protected. So that would be one thing you might want to consider.
For sure.
And lastly, I just wanted to say, I know yesterday was a really, really tough day. This has been a tough week for your team. And I just wanted to say that you have a very ambitious and significant group of projects coming up in the next couple of years. And with the team that we have and the leadership we have, I feel confident we're going to be successful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to you and your team.
Thank you, Mayor Jeffrey. Councillor Fortini.
A couple of years ago, I remember we went for a tour, me, Councillor Wellens and Bowman, where they actually light the building on fire and they pull us out. Remember? A lot of the fire people that were saying that they get on scene, but they're not allowed to get a medication. And they were working on that. Have we worked on that now? Because a lot of times you guys are there before the ambulance. Or,
So we have in our emergency medical responder program, we do medication assist that we do for different medications, nitroglycerin, epinephrine. Now with naloxone, we'll actually be able to deliver that as well. So that is part of our regular ongoing medical training, that provided the person has that medication, it's prescribed to them and it meets all the requirements, we can assist them with giving them, yeah.
So they did solve that problem, because I remember you were saying we had all the EpiPens and all they're not allowed to give anything else.
Yeah,
I mean,
based on
well,
certain
yeah,
circumstances, they can assist the patient with certain medications, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. Councillor Willand.
Yeah, just quickly, thanks very much for the presentation, Bill. On those hot zones, you may have mentioned it, but is that a time frame? Like, what time frame is that over? Is that 1 year?
So that's a 5-year.
5 year, okay.
5 years of data, yeah, that we looked at. Okay. And then we'll continuously analyze that over the years and try to see if our efforts are working to reduce it. And if not, then we will change those strategies and tactics to try to make those areas more fire safe.
Okay, good. And you failed to mention one thing on the 7.1.1-31, the city versus BIA hockey game. You were very instrumental in that game, Bill.
Well, I was leaving that for our CAO to discuss.
Yeah, he may have gotten the goals, Bill, but you were the strong defense for us. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Willems. That exhausts our list. Chief and your team, I did want to say it has been a tough week, not only for the fire department, but also for the city of Brampton. The loss of somebody is always near and dear to the hearts of all members of council, staff across this organization. And I know that you've set in place support for anybody that requires it. If we can have anything that comes out of this, that learning for hopefully prevent something like this in the future, or help anybody that is suffering through any of this. I just want to know, and I think I speak for all of council, that you have our full support, and I'd like to thank and commend you and your staff for this through this tough time. Great report. Thanks to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Can I get a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Moore, the report. All in favor? That carries. Our next is a presentation from Alain Norman, Manager, Brampton Emergency Management Office, Fire Prevention Services, Large Crowd Events, Safety Plans, Protocol. Welcome, Alain.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Council. Thanks again. Wanted to give you just a quick information report on the aspect of large crowd events. As part of our mandate at the city in the Emergency Management Office, I'm really happy to work with Chief Boyes and the team. We are happy to be part of that family, and we're working very closely with them. Our mandate is to not only respond to emergencies, but also we do prevention, mitigation, recovery, so the gamut of the functions of the emergency, and that includes a special event. So anytime that there's a large crowd gathering in Brampton, we are concerned for our citizens, for their safety. We hear about things happening all over the world. Unfortunately, it's a dangerous world out there, and when you get a group of people congregating together, there are those possibilities. So we have, over the years, developed a very structured approach to safety of special events. We work very closely with all of these partners, certainly Peel Police, but also security, St. John Ambulance. And for every large crowd event, generally, our rule of thumb is about 500. When you reach 500 people, we will at least take a look at the event. We may not necessarily do every single event, do a safety plan, but we will at least look at it. And when you're starting to get into the thousands, then we definitely have a safety plan approach, and we develop them, and we distribute to all the stakeholders at these events. Got a few pictures here. We're there. We work closely with fire, police. St. John Ambulance is a regular agency that works with us, but we do work with Peel Paramedics as well. You're probably familiar with our SERVE program. Our SERVE volunteers, community emergency response volunteers, are there at most events to do safety patrols, working closely with security, and they're often the first ones on an event when it happens, whether it's just giving out a Band-Aid or actually providing any kind of support. They're there. And we do lost and found. We actually find a lot of parents because the kids are having a great time, but it's the parents that are lost. So we reunite the parents with their kids. We do a lot of that. And we're there at most large events, very significant events at the city. We also even provide support to private events. So there are organizations in Brampton that put on events that are mostly outdoor events, which they need some help. So we're there as a consultant in a way, and we provide them tips and help, and we have templates of safety plans that we can provide to any group that wants to do an outdoor event. And we sometimes even will be on site. If, for example, the Santa Claus Parade is one of the events where we actually support them by being there on site with them to make sure that as much safety, it's our citizens, whether it's a private or city event, these are our citizens, and when there's a lot of them together, we want to make sure they're safe. So that's been our focus. Our safety plans, we do site assessments, making sure that the area being used for the venue, for the event is safe, that there's no unseen hazards. We monitor the weather constantly, particularly when dealing with extreme weather, extreme winds, or lightning in particular. We look at crowd behavior. There's a lot of difference between a family picnic and a hard rock concert. We want to be sure that we know what kind of crowd we're going to be dealing with so that we have the appropriate response there as well. Interagency communication, we make sure that everybody's on the same line. We issue radios to make sure everybody's using the same radio channel. Police, fire, EMS have different radio channels, and that's fine. But when we're all together in one location, we want to make sure that we're all community with the same equipment. And like I said, we do first aid, lost and found, security. We organize road closures with traffic divisions. We make sure that they're planned properly. We make sure that we keep lanes open for our emergency vehicles, and we have people monitoring that. And we have emergency response plans. If things do turn out, something happens, that we're there, we're already on site. We don't have to start notifying and calling people. We're there, and it's much quicker. Wanted to just point out there's a number of situations that can occur where we may be called to postpone or cancel an event. It's happened occasionally. Fortunately, we haven't had too many of them in the past few years, but these are the conditions that we will look at. Extreme heat, so we're looking at events where we're going to have a risk of exposure, too much exposure to heat. There's not enough shade in the area where it's held. We make sure that there's water distribution established at those events, and there's as much shade as possible, but we can't always do that. The other thing we've realized over the years is we've learned a few lessons. For example, when you have a mat for those dance groups that go out, when the mat is in the sunlight for a while, it gets extremely hot, and unfortunately, we've had some people actually dance bare feet and burn, and so now we monitor the temperature of those mats now, and if we have a situation where we can't stop the heat, can't stop the sun, if the temperature is over a certain limit, we will cancel that dance troop event. So things like that, extreme cold, like we had during the New Year's Eve, the recent one, we had a very extreme. We knew that the crowds would be reduced to start with, but we had to because we also want to be safe for the people working there, the concert, the people are putting on the shows. So we have that. High winds when we're dealing with the fireworks. Most of our fireworks now are more pyrotechnics, so they're less at risk of being canceled. But if we do have a firework event, there are certain limits in this wind speeds that we will cancel an event or cancel the fireworks for the event if we reach those limits. We work closely with Peel Police, so any kind of credible terrorism or violence risk, we certainly count on Peel Police to inform us of that, and we will take those seriously, and we may change the program in some way or even cancel it if necessary if the risk is very high. And the other one is a weather warning, so particularly lightning is always a very dangerous situation for us for outdoor events, and we monitor that very closely. We have been given through our CAO and through policies, and we've put on as an annex the standard operating guideline. We have been given the authority to actually make the decision of canceling or postponing an event. And we work closely. We don't do this we know that there's a lot of money involved in those events, so we don't do it just on a whim. We make sure that it's an informed decision. We discuss it with all of our key agencies, and we discuss it with the organizers before we make that decision. But in the end, when we do make that decision, we expect everybody to comply, and we expect everybody to support that decision. And we ask council that when we're at an event and we make that decision, recognizing that it is a serious situation, that we ask you for your support to make sure that the people understand we need to cancel this. It's a serious situation. That's what I wanted to share with you this morning. We do have a protocol that I've attached to the report if you're interested, if you want to go through it. But it's a very detailed program, and we've been doing it now for many years. And We think that we've curbed a lot of incidents. And we've been there to respond to a few minor incidents. We have had, I think, in all of the years that I've done that, we've only canceled 2 events or postponed 2 events so far. So it's not too bad.
Thanks, Alain.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks, Alain, for this great plan. And I got to say that even when you're not there, you're there, because we were at a dedication for an art installation last year, and all of a sudden, we're posing for the pictures around the art installation, and Events comes over and says, Alain just called, we have to cancel the event. How you ever knew we were standing around a 30-foot high steel structure, I don't know. But lightning was coming in, so we had to do that. But minutes later, you again phoned and said, it's passed, go ahead and do whatever. So I'd just like to commend you on that. Even when you're not around, you are still putting out those messages for safety for anyone involved in activities. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Bowman, you bring forward item 7.2.2 and move the report and the presentation from Alain. All in favor? That carries. Thanks, Alain.
Thank you.
Our next item is 7.3.1, Brampton Community Safety Advisory Committee minutes. We did not bring that forward at that time, so it's before you now. Any comments, questions? Seeing none. Councillor Moore, you'll move that. All in favor? That carries. Councillor question periods. Any members of council have any questions related to community services? Seeing none, I'll move the chair over to Councillor Bowman for his one report on economic development. He's going to take it where he sits and ask that Councillor Dillon, who will be replacing Councillor Miles, come and sit here. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much. Welcome to the economic development section of the meeting. We have a report, 8.2.1, that was in your notes, and it's from Kelly Stahl, Senior Manager, Cultural Services, regarding the Key to the City program. Was there any questions or discussions? Councillor Willens will move it. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. 8.2.2 has already been dealt with. Under 8.3, new business, we do have a standing verbal report from Mr. Bob Sagan, Advisor Economic Development, on the university update. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to ask Paul to lead the first part of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. We'll get to Bob in a minute, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that are happening. I just want to point out we continue to wait, as you are, for an announcement from the province on the status of the application by Ryerson that they've submitted jointly with Sheridan to the Ministry of Education and Advanced Skills Development. We don't have an announcement yet, but all signs are very positive. We hope that announcement is imminent. I know I've used imminent a number of times. This time it's for real, okay? It's going to be imminent. I can sense it coming very soon. And you read the tea leaves. Of course, you have Premier Kathleen went out there making a number of announcements. So I know that today is the budget. I don't think we'll hear anything today, but I'm hoping soon after that, maybe over the next week or so, we're going to hear something. On April the 19th, we have Minister Mitzi Hunter. She's the Minister of Education and Advanced Skills Development. She will be attending a Brampton Board of Trade event. So if we don't hear anything by April 19th, feel free to show up and ask her why. And if we do hear something before then, I think it'd be a good opportunity for everyone to discuss the project moving ahead in the future. Now, on other fronts here in-house, we continue to work on a number of different initiatives related to planning and development and the construction issues that are related to establishing a Ryerson campus here in downtown Brampton. We're working with our implementation steering committee chaired by Al here, who's been helping us out on that level. We've also been dealing with Chris Evans, who's now the new lead for Ryerson on the Brampton project. He's been very excited. He's been very good to work with over the past month or so since he's been hired on in that role. Some of those discussions have been about establishing the Ryerson presence here in Brampton, even before the big construction starts. Get an early presence of Ryerson here, I think, is a really important part of this whole project. We've talked about them establishing a project management office here in Brampton with about 7 or 8 people, perhaps taking over some of our city space that we have right now. We talked about establishing their innovation hub and their cybersecurity zone that they're hoping to establish here in Brampton earlier rather than later, and Bob will talk a little bit more about that. We've also talked about their Chang School of Continuing Education, which I think is a really interesting part of Ryerson University. They do have a large program for continuing education, and it's actually, the Chang School is actually a more nimble and flexible program than Ryerson as a whole. Because when you think about Ryerson University establishing the larger campus here in town, it's going to be a 4-year program. It takes time to hire staff to set up that whole program, so it'll be a few years in the making. But when we talk about the Chang School of Continuing Education, they are more nimble and they are more flexible. They can establish programs fairly quickly. They have a large online presence, but we're hoping to actually get them to be a part of the to establish a physical presence here in Brampton sooner rather than later. We went down to meet representatives, the dean of the Chang School of Continuing Education a few weeks ago, and they're very excited about landing some of their courses here in Brampton. Some of them along the lines of emergency management. I know Madame Mayor mentioned leveraging some of the Ryerson skills that they have right now, and I know the Chang School of Education has an emergency program, or an emergency management program that they are actually considering establishing here in Brampton as well. So stay tuned for that. Actually, yesterday we had one of my colleagues, Michelle Gadzik, she actually invited staff from the Chang School of Education to come up, and they went for a bit of a tour of the downtown and some of the facilities we have here in Brampton, and they left being very excited. And I think you're going to see many of those tours happen in the future, because we really want to get part of the whole communications process as well, is trying to educate faculty and staff from Ryerson University about what we have here in Brampton, about making them excited about wanting to come out here and teach the courses that they have to offer. On other fronts, we continue to work on the MOU. This has very much been right now an internal discussion between the various departments and divisions and our implementation steering committee to establish our needs and our wants. After all, we're investing $150 million in this process. And we want Ryerson to succeed short, medium, and long term, so we need to be sure that if we're investing money in them, they're here to stay, and we want them to succeed and they're here for the long term. More recently, I just wanted to give you a bit of an update on the event I had the privilege of attending last week. It was actually with William Osler. They're beginning their strategic planning process, so we were invited as part of their outreach. And there's about 20 of us there representing various different partners and organizations that work with William Osler. They really want to build on the success they have with the Region of Peel, the City of Brampton, as well as other organizations. But who was there also was President Mohammed Lachemi from Ryerson. When I see that happening, you know that things are coming, and then that it's not only us who are excited about Ryerson University, but these big organizations like William Osler who understand the benefits of a school like Ryerson coming to Brampton, and what they can leverage their skills at. Big data analytics came up as a topic of discussion in terms of trying to understand what the issues are. There has to be a lot of information gathering, and I know Ryerson is actually really successful at that. So maybe may not be the traditional sense of medicine as we know right now, but Ryerson can certainly leverage their skills in big data analytics to help out organizations like William Osler in that regard. So from there, I'm going to give it to Bob Sagan, who's going to give you some more information on the cybersecurity front.
Thank you, Paul. To you, Chair, and members of Council. On this issue of cybersecurity, you may recall that almost a full month ago, the federal government released its budget, and in the budget there were a number of initiatives which the manager of government relations, I think, has provided to all of Council in a real good detailed form. But in that was the federal government's desire to create a national cybersecurity strategy, and funded $750 million over 5 years for a number of initiatives, mostly focused within the government of Canada, coordinating all their efforts. And then once they have that done, try to bring them back out to the Canadian public on outreach. But it's an area we're following up on and working with both with Sheridan and Ryerson. What pieces of this national cybersecurity strategy would then be applicable to the City of Brampton, to the Ryerson University and Sheridan College, where we could tap into some other additional funding to help move this along. Almost simultaneous with this, Ryerson University, working with the Mayor's Office and with Mayor Jeffrey, and Chief of Staff, the CEO Harry Slang, and myself, invited us to a session with the Cyber Canada, first time, Cyber Canada National Senior Leadership Summit. This summit provided an opportunity to bring both academics, business leaders across Canada, professionals in cybersecurity, and people involved both in Canadian Armed Forces and in national security to talk about what this means. It was also very focused on small, medium-sized enterprises. the sessions just before the summit was launched, Mayor Jeffrey and our Chief of Staff and myself had a chance to meet with several members of the Canadian Armed Forces, with Ryerson staff, about how the Canadian Armed Forces are going to tap into whole issues of cybersecurity. It is part of the Armed Forces effort to have a cyber force, both to defend and to attack. And what that means both for new talent coming into the Canadian Armed Forces and how it is with reserve forces. So they're just getting this moving along, and the opportunity to hear from the Mayor and President Chimney about the Ryerson proposal, the Brampton interest, the sense of the activities and the direction you'd like to go, really got them interested, and they want to be part of that. A second meeting was held through the assistance of the Canadian Council of Innovation, led by Jim Balsillie, again with the support of Mayor Jeffrey and President Chimney, to talk to a number of small business leaders, not the largest firms, small, medium-sized business leaders. By the way, all of them doing very well in Canada, expanding at a very good rate, all of them. And we had a chance to bring them up to date on what's the proposal, engage them in the discussion, all again very interested in what it means for future talent, what it means for training existing talent and other firms to bring them up to speed, and how this gets into future research innovation. Finally, they're all keen to participate and work with Ryerson, ourselves, Sheridan, in some manner to bring this to the kind of benefits they could see it. The summit itself, I'm sure both the CAO, Mayor Jeffrey and the Chief Staff can also tell you, very full, lots of activity, very good speakers, but most importantly, a good chance to have engagement between the people in the room and listen to talk with the speakers. Some of them brought some very interesting perspectives from a more global view of the speed, the intensity, and the threats, which kind of concerns you. But on the other hand, listen to the business leaders, the ability and capacity and innovation to kind of respond to this better and better. That also led us to have a chance to talk to some of the business leaders, and one of them talked to Mayor Jeffrey and had talked to myself. Myself and Michelle Gadget followed up with last Friday. Small firm, about 40 people, still living off of a Canadian venture capital funding. Good startup, but involved in cyber analytics, doing real-time cyber analysis, so that the company they're dealing with will know within minutes that they're being hacked, who's doing it, how it is, what kind of response they can get, rather than wait till 2, 3, 4 weeks later, or as we see in some cases in the modern press, sometimes months later. And this is coming more and more an issue of how to do this fast. We had a very good conversation, brought them fully up to speed with what's happening in Brampton with Ryerson and Sheridan, but independently they raised, and I haven't had a chance to talk to my colleague, the Director of Economic Development, but independently they raised, at some point in time, they're going to outgrow the Toronto facility, and a lot of their participants are from the GTA. They may be wishing to look at a new location, and we'll certainly put them in touch with Bob and his team to see if they can encourage them to look towards Brampton and the new facilities here as a way of getting home. So with that, Mr. Chair, and to the members, Paul and I open for some comments or questions as you wish.
Thank you very much, Paul and Bob. There is no comments. Can I have a motion to receive the reports? Councillor Willens, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on now to 8.3.2, and that's an item that I added to the agenda. So bear with me just a minute. We have some bright shirts in the crowd that have joined us now with wolf hacks. And as committee is aware, with a focus on boldness and innovation, the city is set to enter the Government of Canada's Smart Cities Challenge. And integral to winning the Smart Cities Challenge is understanding the residents' current issues through public engagement. One such way the city has done this is by hosting the Smart Cities Hackathon this past Sunday in partnership with Wolf Hacks. Stand up and thank you very much for being, stand up. Yeah. Thank you. More than 130 entrepreneurs, students, members of government, and experts in technology came together for the event with a shared goal of building solutions that will make Brampton a better place to live through intense, real-world problem solving. Congratulations, they're not here, are they? Congratulations to Abhishek Patel, Kirtan Patel, Will Merrill, and Junid Munshi, they're not here, no? Who won first place in the hackathon for their app-based solution to improve quality of life in Brampton. Over 12 hours, they developed an app that would allow residents to report issues in real time that impair their enjoyment of the city, such as graffiti, safety concerns, etc., by submitting an image online and making it easy to report issues, saving the city and region resources. I actually met with these individuals. They told me they were going to win this contest. They were very sure of themselves, and they demonstrated their technology to me, and it is phenomenal. So we're looking forward to seeing that. Other themes that students worked on included affordable housing, immigration integration, aging communities, transportation issues, government transparency and citizen engagement, job opportunities, environment and sustainability, neighborhood revitalization, and public safety. The event was a resounding, tremendous, fabulous success. There aren't enough words to describe it. And when we look at what can be achieved when our staff and external partners collaborate towards a common goal with a bunch of brilliant entrepreneurs that came here. I want to thank Smart Cities team, Economic Development, the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, Strategic Communications, IT, Transit, and the CAO's office, as well as Chinguacousy Secondary School, the Peel District Board of Trade, Our Wave, and Startup Peel for all their hard work in bringing this 12-hour marathon session to a phenomenal close with a lot of really good results. Events like this help showcase that Brampton is a future-ready organization with a sharp focus, and that we are a technology and innovation hub for business. And on top of that, that we've got some brilliant young people coming up to take part in all the reorganization and everything else that's going to go on in the city. Part of the exposure that we did get was an article yesterday in the Toronto Star talking about how great the event was and how great the organization and how great the applications were that these kids developed over 12 hours. So I can't say enough good things about it. Thank you to all involved. Phenomenal effort, and as the resounding chorus came at the end of it, we're looking forward to Wolfhack 2019. So thank you very much, guys. Any questions? Seeing none. Can I have a motion to receive my presentation? Councillor Dillon, thank you very much. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Okay, we now move on. There's no correspondence. Councillor question period. Any councillor questions? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Councillor Dillon for corporate services.
Thank you so much, Chair Bowman. Seeing as it's approaching 12:15, is there a desire to take a break for lunch? Yes? So we're going to take lunch till 1 p.m. then. We're recessed. Thank you. Heard the growling. We're going to commence with the corporate services portion of the meeting. And we're going to begin with 9.11, legalization of recreational cannabis. Lowell?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll assume that at some point I'll get onto your screen. So for now, you do have the presentation, so I'll just speak to that. Through you, Chair, to the committee, there's just a couple of housekeeping matters that I wanted to touch upon. The first is it's actually been over a month since the last time I've been able to address this group, so it's great to be back, and it's nice to have some form of normalcy to my life again, so thank you very much for having me. The second, but probably most importantly, is as you can imagine, the road or path to legalization of cannabis, it's a complex one. It involves so many different players from across the organization, and I just wanted to take this time to at least acknowledge some of the staff who has led to the creation of both the presentation as the report. It is something that we've kind of hit the road running from day one, and as more information became available, we really try to do our due diligence to update this council at appropriate points. The second little piece I wanted to touch on, it was touched on a little bit this morning with the delegation, but the city has been working pretty closely with the region of Peel on this, so I'll touch upon that in a little bit. The purpose of us coming together today and present this on the cannabis is we wanted to try to align it with the region's report for tomorrow. We just thought that would be a really good opportunity to see a complete picture, but due to unforeseen circumstances, that's not the case. But I think heading into those of you who are going to be at the regional council next week, we'll have a really good sense of where we're coming, and then get that public health perspective from the medical officer of health, who I think have done a pretty good job. And that relates more, as we already talked about, the delegation from this morning. The third, there is a tremendous amount of information to cover. So I really do apologize if I'm looking down at my notes, which is a little bit not typical for me, but I just don't want to make sure that I miss anything. My attention, because we presented some of this information already, I don't want to regurgitate what we've already presented. So I'm not going to touch on every point on every slide, but just really provide a little bit of an overview and some contextual pieces and some information just for that I think we wanted to highlight. So the steps to legalize recreational cannabis really began in earnest leading up to the 2015 federal election. This was a key plank within the federal Liberal Party's election platform. To the point, or to the question earlier this morning, the federal government leading up to the introduction of the legislation did do consultations. There was a working group who presented the federal government with its findings throughout 2016, and that information led to the overall the Bill C-45, the Cannabis Act, as well as BC-46, which is the accompanying one, and that really is to set up the criminal code elements, and that's more for the driving under impaired. That would now include recreational cannabis. The purpose of this slide is just to really show you the various roles and responsibilities for all levels of government. In a couple of slides, I'll be talking specifically to the region, Peel Regional Police, as well as the city, but from a federal perspective, they are very much involved, especially Health Canada, from licensing as well as enforcing grow operations. One of the amendments to Bill C-45 was that now the federal government has to provide an outline of how they're going to be introducing edibles 1 year once the legislation is passed. So a year whenever edibles will be sold and distributed in provinces and territories across the Canada. And as well, the other piece is around the tax administration. We'll talk about the costing and the funding for municipalities in a little bit. So we know that where Canada stands, each province and territories also has a role to develop how this is going to be distributed across their province. We're all fairly familiar with the direction that the province of Ontario is going. The province of Ontario, through Bill 174, is going to be the sole distributor or retail provider of cannabis in Ontario. They're very much following the LCBO model. Part of that legislation also talks about the places of use. And we know that the provincial government has put a blanket use on this, is only no public space, so only private residences. There are some nuances and caveats to this, especially when we've had this conversation before around condominiums. While condos themselves are a private residence and smoking would, through this legislation, be allowed, there could be nuances where condo boards may direct whether or not they can be allowed to smoke in their own personal units. We asked this question to the Attorney General, and that is a possibility, but they would be governed under private law, so there are some implications and nuances to this moving forward. And the other key piece is around the age of 19. So even when we talk about the citing, no individuals or persons under the age of 19, based on our conversations with the LCBO and Ministry of Finance and LCBO, it's people under the age of 19 aren't even able to physically go into the retail outlets. The other big pieces are around public health and policing and education awareness, and also the province has provided some pretty significant penalties for those who are driving under the influence of recreational cannabis. And the other piece in terms of timing of this, I'm sure a lot of you read or was paying attention to the media firestorm last week. I think realistically we are probably looking at some time by summer 2018. And the reason why this is because provinces, including Ontario, need time to actually get things up and running. So sometime this summer, and summer, as we know in political speak, can happen on that last day of summer, first day of fall type of time frame. There are two separate streams. So the legalization of recreational cannabis isn't removing the medicinal stream of cannabis. As far as we can tell, there is really no indication from the federal government whether or not they're going to be merging the two streams, or if they even have that intention. So chances are they're probably not, or if that does, that's going to be a conversation somewhere down the road. So in Ontario and across Canada, there's going to be still the two streams, and the same rules are going to apply. They have to be purchased with a medical prescription from a person licensed by Health Canada. So Health Canada really holds the cards for that. There is an ability, similar to the legislation, Bill C-45, for personal cultivation of cannabis plants, or have somebody do that on their behalf. But again, you need to have a license from Health Canada. And I've mentioned through Bill 174, the only place you're going to be able to consume recreational cannabis is in your own private residences. But there are pieces in there that, within Bill 174, that will allow in public spaces such as long-term care facilities. So there are some caveats again to that piece, and that'll probably be fleshed out further with the Region Appeals presentation. So we have been working very closely with the region as well as Peel Regional Police. We have been founding members of the Peel Working Group, so it includes Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon, as well as Peel Regional Police and Ontario Provincial Police. And the purpose of this group is really to share information. You know, we all kind of get our sources from all over the place, and really the purpose of this was to come together and collectively to share that information. There's very clear roles and responsibility through the provincial legislation in terms of the direction they're going towards. So a lot of it is on public health, education, and awareness. So again, the delegation this morning really aligns with that piece. That's where a lot of the funding will probably be allocated. There's other aspects that the region may become involved in, you know, the use of ambulances, and then also how does this interplay with long-term care facilities as well as the social housing. So there's further conversations that need to be happening at the regional level. Peel Regional Police, within Bill 174, police are explicitly mentioned as being primarily ones who are going to be enforcing this. So again, there's a tremendous amount of costs and resources that are required by Peel Regional Police, including ensuring that they have enough resources available. Then there's a huge cost for training. And then the other piece that will probably come their way is also on the actual complaints. So saying all that, you know, where does the city of Brampton fit into? I think that there's going to be a lot of unknowns that I'll be talking about over the next couple slides, but, you know, working together and having regular conversations, we kind of have a sense of where they're going to be moving towards. So we assume that this is going to be all hands on deck, that legalization of cannabis will touch on some department at some point. So this is just a very high level overview. Corporate services, we've had good conversations with enforcement that there may be some overlap, but until we can actually finalize that, we actually have to see the provincial regulations on enforcement, like how does the province actually going to enforce this, and what are the bodies that are going to be implementing. So to say that our bylaw officers are going to be the ones who implement this, it's really hard to say, but given the importance to public health as well as policing, that's probably where most of the resources are going to be allocated. Obviously, we still have our due diligence to do with the licensing aspects, but again, that is from Health Canada, and we have a very specific role from bylaws to clerks as well. Planning and development services, obviously there's a connection with to ensure that everything where these retail outlets are located, that they actually align with our land use and planning policies. Fire services and emergency services, fire chief, I'll probably not do this right, but I believe that there could be some, the bigger piece for the fire services, if there's any extractions or use of kind of the chemicals that go into producing more particular the edibles. Again, as the chief shared with me, we don't really know the cost. And that's consistent messaging from police chiefs from across Canada as well. So there's still this big unknown of what we're going to find once we get in there. And the same thing with protective gear for the enforcement. While we're not 100% sure what our role is compared to that of other agencies, in particular policing. And community services, Service Brampton. The reason why that's there is, you know, quite honestly, I think it's reasonably, we can assume that perhaps calls, those who are not paying attention to this and they start smelling an abundance of this type of smoke, who do you call first? Chances are it could be the city of Brampton. So again, this is where we want to make sure that we're working with the region, our our Peel Regional Police, just to ensure that we're able to direct them to the appropriate resource. And this is actually gives us a good benchmark to start monitoring what kind of calls are we getting related to the recreational cannabis, and that'll help us plan going forward. So on the retail side, I've already mentioned around that nobody other than the province of Ontario through the Ontario Cannabis Store is allowed to sell recreational cannabis. Again, through the legislation, the province takes this seriously, and there's heavy fines for landlords who knowingly lease out their storefronts for the sale of recreational cannabis. As we all know, the city of Brampton has been allocated at least one store that will be open sometime in summer 2018. We were directed from staff by council to take a proactive approach. So when we met with the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General and LCBO, we've really started that dialogue, not only in terms of siting, but what are those parameters? So, and I'll talk about that in the next slide. It was important for us to identify all the kind of what ifs, and I think there's been a very positive relationships with the LCBO as they kind of work with their retail, their leasing company to ensure, or their agency as they find stores across Ontario. And for the City of Brampton, our plans really interpreted as retail use, so very similar to LCBO. The province, in theory, could just kind of go out and say, we're going to be going here, we don't really care, but it's been a really positive relationship right now, and they actually have been very forthright with the information. On the producer side, again, from Health Canada, these producers need to require a license. We have a role to inform council and other members of the public. We view these as long as they follow our bylaws, which is allowed in commercial zones, then we allow them. Right now, we actually have 2 that are licensed. There are some that have come through the pipes, but right now they haven't issued that license, so they're not technically allowed to be operating. And then on the other side is on the edibles. This is a whole other kettle of fish. So as the federal government moves towards this, we'll have to have a better sense of how do they plan on not distributing, but selling that to the public, because again, as you'll probably hear from public health, it's a totally different mechanism, and enforcement is going to be a little bit trickier. So we need to be ensuring that we're following that very closely. So we were hoping for an announcement sometime this spring, because quite honestly, to get a storefront up and running by the end of summer, the LCBO and the Ontario, I guess the cannabis retail stores, will need to ensure that they can kind of get that up by the summer to meet that timeline. We do know that they're looking for something around 2,500 square feet. And like I said, we have provided them with a pretty comprehensive list of where we do not, our preference of where you shouldn't be locating. Coupled with this, we did provide them with some GIS mapping. We wanted distances from 30, 100, and 500 meter buffers. So the 500 meter actually came from the region of Peel from a public health perspective. And so they've actually, the province has actually been really open to that, so they've been very conscious of whatever location they have. They may not, from in each of these, they may not be exactly 500 meters, but I think that it won't be, 50 meters and then 500 meters. I think in terms of all that, they've been very conscious of looking at that 500 meters. And in a conference call with AMO, we were one of the few communities that actually did the mapping, so I think that the province really appreciated us taking that proactive step. Oh, and I should just mention on this is once a storefront or a site is located, the province will start doing a pretty rigorous public consultation. So they are going to, public has a chance of, here's what the store is going to look like, here's the location. So they are looking for a public consultation process. But again, that's run from the province. From the city perspective, we're just ensuring that they meet those criteria and they're locating in a retail zoned location. On the enforcement side, this is probably the one bucket where we know the least. We know through the information we know, especially through the legislation, is that police officers have been sanctioned to enforce a lot of these elements. We know that additional time and resources will be required, and once we know those regulations, then we'll be able to make a much better determination as to how that affects our bylaw and the municipality more specifically. In the legislation, they do identify provincial inspectors, but that hasn't been properly defined. It was as they related to the Smoke-Free Ontario update 2017. Not a whole lot of information other than the fact that this could be a potential body that enforces recreational cannabis, but again, we don't know at this point. And we are looking at, through our nuisance bylaw, at least looking at there may not be a whole lot that we can do, but we wanted to take this opportunity as staff is reviewing that to at least put a recreational cannabis lens on that. So then if there are any updates or amendments, then we can provide that to you when available. But again, we also have to be conscious, and Paul always reminds me, is that sometimes enforcement of this, whatever we put on, can be the difficult part. But again, I think it's an important lens that we should be thinking proactively on. Available funding. Interesting question. So what we know so far is that the federal government is going to allocate the amount of revenue that they collect to the provinces. So right now there's been some talk about how much money the federal government is actually going to be receiving through this. I don't want to put a figure on it because quite frankly I don't think the federal government knows. of what we know from the Ontario government, that they're going to turn around and take 40 million of whatever share the province gets and move that towards municipalities. So a lot of that will be for public health, law enforcement. So again, here's where we can be advocating for Peel Regional Police. Costs will also be incurred by the city of Brampton through other departments. Again, we've already identified that. AMO has been helpful, and we've been feeding into the process about kind of calculating what is the cost range that could be impacted to municipalities. Based on their formula, the city of Brampton's portion, including the costs that it takes to enforce it from a public health as well as Peel Police, could be in the neighborhood of 900 to 1.8 million, but that's just if the world kind of works according to what AMO suggests. So again, it's going to be very, very important for us to kind of monitor the actual costs moving forward, even with fire, to ensure that we're all on the same page. The biggest cost really probably will be on Peel Regional Police, and I think that in the neighborhood of about $8 million overall is probably what the impact could very well be, and that's using the formula used by York Regional Police, and given the population and costs, I think we could be very well in that ballpark. And the big piece as included in the report, and here I think what's really going to be important is that we advocate, and we have been doing this, is whatever the costs are incurred to the municipalities, is important for us to recoup that cost from the province, and that's consistent with FCM and AMO and other municipalities. Other considerations, I didn't want to lose sight. I've kind of mentioned that recreational cannabis will not be allowed in places other than private residences. However, the province is consulting now on the use of these cannabis lounges. So these cannabis lounges would basically allow for public consumption in these zoned or these licensed cannabis lounges. But we don't know whether or not the province is going to be moving towards this, but it's something that we're keeping an eye on, because we need to make sure that if this does go forward, and if there are establishments that want to enter into Brampton, that it meets our zoning bylaws. So again, there could be some discussions that we want to have moving forward. On the personal recreational cannabis cultivation, seeds will be available to grow 4 plants per household. This is something that's up for debate. The federal government actually removed the height restrictions, because I've been told that you can actually grow cannabis horizontal. So those who choose to grow at home, they don't necessarily have to follow a specific height restriction. It is 4 plants per household, so if you have a household of 8, you can still allow only 4 plants. And I mentioned the no height stipulation. So what's next? I think we're going to still continue to work with the province to ensure that we find an appropriate site for the Ontario Cannabis Store retail outlet. We want to ensure that we're continually advocating to ensure that the city, as well as the Region of Peel, receive its fair share of the sale of cannabis in our borders. We want to work with the Region of Peel and Peel Regional Police on the enforcement piece, public health and safety and education. But at the end of the day, even though that public education is more on the public health side, I think we as a municipality has an opportunity to actually spread the word of the importance to our residents. We will continue, as we've been doing all along, to monitor and update this council, perhaps through government relations updates or other reports as they become necessary, just to make sure that you're up to date on the most latest and greatest on this file. And with that, that's a long way of saying that Canada's legalizing recreational cannabis.
Thanks for the presentation, though. We have a few questions. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I know the report was available on the printed agenda, but we did have a delegation this morning, and the presentation that you just did, Lowell, was a handout for us this morning. So if Manny Bata, that delegated this morning, doesn't have a copy of this presentation, can we make arrangements to get it to him if we have his contact information?
So through you, as he was leaving, I actually got his information, because I wanted to make sure that I help him get on to the regional delegations.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the presentation. That really kind of simplifies it for us.
Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Chair Dillon, and through you, thanks, Will. You touched a little bit on the distribution of funds or revenue, and I guess that's going to be an ongoing. We're going to watch that closely to ensure the accuracy. Have you or have we had any calculation of cost estimates and therefore developed any kind of financial plan?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Paleshi. In short, we used the figure, the 900 to 1.8 million, that was based on, if I said AMO, it was actually FCM's cost calculation. So the way that we calculated that was using the population, and then we just factored in what they assumed the costs were. There's two costs. One is the municipal administration, so that's public health, that's the enforcement, that's the bylaw, the licensing. The other piece of the pie that's, it talks about it in the report, is the policing, because that's really the significant costs. So again, using the, what their FCM is anticipating a formula could be, or the cost, we anticipate that'll be about $8 million. We've been talking kind of informally without a specific council resolution on that, but now that we have a resolution, or assuming that this passes today, then we will go forward and speak to the province and the federal government. We can leverage FCM and AMO lending our voices. That at the end of the day, I think what's important is that the province makes this whole for the city of Brampton and the region of Peel.
Okay, and our approval process with regards to bylaws, do we need to make any adjustments to bylaw zonings or any creations of any of the policies around this?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Paleshi, the short answer is no. As long as the site, like for the retail perspective, as long as it's the zone or the area that they're selecting is designated as retail, then there's no amendments we need to do. And the same thing on the producers. As long as the sites that they're selecting is zoned industrial, they're permitted to go there. So there is no further amendments at this point as of right now.
So have we looked at or decided to make any adjustments to that?
Through you, Chair, at this point, no.
So if we have an LCBO that's across the street from a school, we're okay with that? Or beside a park?
Through you, Chair, the answer is no, we're not going to be okay with that, and I think that's why the previous slide was important, because it talks about specific site criteria. And so far in our conversations with the province, they are adhering to that. So we are recognizing that we don't want them, even like that 30-meter buffer, that's basically right across the street. That's why we really opened it up to that 500 meters. So in theory, the sites, that shouldn't be an issue. But again, the site selection is driven by the province, and we've been grateful for their open and ongoing conversations with us.
We don't need to actually change any of our land use policies, land use planning or zoning.
Through you, Chair, no.
Okay, because we trust the province.
Well, again, we yes, at this point, there's no reason to lead us to believe that we shouldn't. Again, because we built in those buffers, the province is working diligently to meet those.
Okay. And then just our workplace drug and alcohol policies here at the City of Brampton, have we started the updating process on that?
Through you, Chair, that I'm not sure of.
We've started to look at those implications with HR, and we'll come back to you on that.
And then do we have any authority on workplace drug and alcohol policies throughout businesses in the City of Brampton, or that's federal or provincial, right?
Provincial.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi. Chair, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Just quickly, I guess maybe it might be a question for Paul. Do you foresee, I guess, because this is probably looks like it's going to maybe fall under the nuisance bylaws, do we foresee any additional bylaw officers down the road because of it? Because I think a lot of calls are going to be in the residential areas, are going to be nuisance calls.
Yeah, come to mind.
Any additional work may take additional bodies. And it's a guess of how much work it would be. I couldn't, Lowell and I have talked, and we can't put a number of inspections. We can't put the work that we would have to do on the cases before court, bringing to the courts. We would know that. I just can't. But yeah, any additional work would be additional bodies.
Do you foresee any down the road of, if we do have to put officers on the road, can that cost be recouped from that little bit of $40 million we're giving to all the municipalities across Ontario?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Willens, we're kind of, until we get the regulations of how this is going to be enforced, to answer that question will probably be a little bit premature. Indications are is that the province is going to be leveraging the police services. So again, so until we kind of know for sure what our role is, and even from public education, I can see probably even a bigger role from public health, real public health, especially from that education and awareness and data factor. So the impact, I think it's still a little bit premature about what the actual cost implications are going to be, but we will make sure that the advocacy continues, that we will make this whole if there's any costs specifically incurred by the city.
Okay,
So, sorry, can we get the CEO to jump in real quick?
Through you, I just wanted to assure you that, when we're working with the regional appeal, I'm the loudest voice to say there's probably going to be an impact on the city of Brampton staff, whether that's 311, bylaw, fire. So we're staying on top of this, and as soon as we get more information, we'll make sure we quantify that from a dollar perspective, and we're going to fight for our share.
Okay, because that $40 million seems like a lot, but that's revenue to municipalities. There's a lot of municipalities in the province of Ontario, so. Good thing. Good report.
So if you could just, Paul, I had actually a quick question. There's no other speakers. Can you define the actual nuisance bylaw, what it entails?
The actual nuisance to you, Mr. Chair, the actual nuisance bylaw is something that we're working on to address multiple issues such as Airbnbs, the chance to encounter those parties of where marijuana is being used, some noise complaints. It's a bit of a catch-all that we're recreating.
Right, and if there was somebody smoking in their backyard and the smoke caused a nuisance for a neighbor, would that fall under this nuisance bylaw?
Are you talking tobacco smoke, or are you talking marijuana?
Well, specifically to marijuana. Like, for example, if I was smoking or somebody was smoking in their backyard, but it's going into somebody's house to the point where they can't, even in the summertime, keep their windows open.
Yeah, that's going to be a very tough one in the sense that, one is we don't have jurisdiction over that. I mean, the marijuana is is a criminal code issue, so we don't have that right of authority to go in, enter, deal with that. We could deal with the smoke in as a nuisance to somebody else, but then we have to prove that within the courts, and that's going to be difficult because it's not a tangible thing. It's not a noise where we can measure the noise level. It's not a drinking offense where there's cans of beer involved. This is smoke, and this is something you can't capture other than you can testify as to the smell of it and the possibility of it being a nuisance to somebody else. So it's going to be a very difficult area for us to enforce.
Right, the second question, I'm not sure if this is to you or to Lowell. Is there it's going to be consumed in private residences, or private buildings. Is there, if somebody was walking down the street and they looked, or they were acting as if they were high, is there a measure the same way that the police uses, I guess, the breathalyzer to see if that person is indeed
that would lend itself to public intoxication by whatever means the federal government is going to dictate. If you're in that state and you are intoxicated by alcohol, yeah, absolutely. The measures there, you've been drinking, you smell like alcohol, etc. That's an arrestable offense for that person's safety, etc. But for marijuana, we'll have to wait and see where it goes. It will still fall back to the policing element within the city.
So those, I guess the federal government hasn't released information on how they'll be measuring that. Is that correct?
No, not. I have unless Loyal has something else.
No, through you, Chair. A lot of that will come through Bill C-46, which is running parallel with Bill C-45. So both of those bills are in the Senate. So we'll learn a little bit more about that after the legislation, than any pending regulations to follow as a result of those legislation.
Thank you so much. That's all the questions for me. We have no more speakers. And oh, sorry, Councilor Sporberry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of nuisance, I know I've never used this stuff myself, but I have gone by areas where people are using, and it's very noticeable. It travels a long distance, and it's very noticeable when somebody's smoking up somewhere. I can see that, if you have, some neighbors are very sensitive about different things. We get people complaining about the airplane noise, we got people complaining about kids playing on the streets, you got people complaining about dogs running around, cats running, we get all kinds of people. And I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of people complaining about getting the snow, somebody smoking up in the backyard and it's spreading to the neighbors. And that's gonna be a big issue. I believe it's gonna be a big issue for us, but people are gonna be complaining. Is there an opportunity for municipalities to comment about this very issue about the nuisance of, to the neighbors, to a sensitive neighbor? Can we comment to Health Canada and say that this is an issue that should be addressed in the regulation?
We would hope so. I can tell you, if you look at what present sedate is, if somebody is using marijuana in an apartment building and it wafts through the apartment building, it's very difficult for even the police to go and do an execution of their authorities within that and stop that use, et cetera, stop the smoke. So they are looking at it from a provincial, from a federal perspective. They haven't got anything concrete yet, but I can tell you every enforcement agency, that is on the tip of their tongues. That's the question, is the abundance of smoke and what can we do about it? And there is no answer yet.
So is that going to be addressed through the chair in the regulation? Do we know if that's going to be addressed, nuisance?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Scovieri. We hope so, but again, once we get the details, we'll have a better sense. And I think once we get those regulations, then we'll be able to come back to council for kind of a more wholesome presentation.
So can we send a motion, a resolution to Health Canada and say that this is one of the biggest concerns of municipalities is a nuisance factor in dealing with a nuisance of people complaining? Can we send something to them?
Through the chair, that we've along with many other municipalities through AMO and with Lowell and I meeting with the province on numerous times, they are aware of that issue, and it's something they are looking at and will be considering as part of the rollout of the legislation and the regulations to support that. There, as Lowell has articulated, there's a number of balls up in the air in terms of decisions that need to be made, one of which is at what role will this provincial body be in terms of enforcement? Because if they take on the lead role, then the impact on municipal police forces and the OPP across the province will be significantly less. However, if they decide that that provincial body will play a more minor role, then those costs, as Lowell had said, will be a lot higher. And that's probably why you haven't seen many municipalities actually roll out a lot of those enforcement costs from a policing perspective. But they are aware of those issues in relation to cannabis smoke and the impact it's going to have from a nuisance perspective and what context. And they're still working on what that's going to look like. And that's part of the consultations they will have moving forward. But we can send something additional if you wish.
Okay, and the last question through the chair is that I believe Markham or someone has passed a resolution in council that they will not allow any retail stores to sell cannabis in their jurisdiction, in their municipality. I believe someone out there in East End.
Richmond Hill, I believe.
Is it Richmond Hill? So do we have, if the city council wants to take that route, do we have the authority to outlaw any sales within our borders?
Through the chair, I believe both Richmond Hill and Markham, who were not on the initial list of municipalities who were to receive a cannabis store, came out and indicated that they do not have a preference to have a LCBO type cannabis store in the municipalities. They're in an easier position to say it because they weren't identified as one of those municipalities to get a site. No one has come forward yet out of those 14 municipalities to state that they will not get one. I believe while it would be up to this council to determine if or not they wanted to put that kind of position forward. However, despite that position, I believe that if the province wanted to, they would still be in a position to open a store regardless of that motion.
It's like the LCBO type
That's
situation
correct.
where they can pretty well open whatever they want.
And however, they've been quite collaborative and open, and I had a discussion with LCBO yesterday to get an update. One of the things they identified to me was how they read the online report and they looked at the report going to Peel Region next week, and they expressed how thoughtful, comprehensive, and exceptional the work was, and supported staff and council for all the progressive work. And as Lowell had indicated, they've been really working towards that 500-meter buffer in terms of trying to identify those locations in the city. And they haven't come forward to say, well, thanks, we know you want this, but too bad, this is where we want to put it. They haven't taken that position with us at all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spilberry. Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if I'm struggling with working with the province to figure out the buffer, and I think it's, you know, FCM urges municipalities to create, to start at least creating amendments to the bylaws or prior to, so that we can get our rules out there and set in the ground. I don't see a problem with this council putting forward a motion saying that we will not allow this and stick to the 500-meter buffer. I don't know if 500 meter is that number, or it should be more, or it should be less, but again, FCM urges municipalities to start this process now, and I don't know why we're not, because other municipalities are. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll take a comment to that.
Pardon?
I'll ask for Joe to comment, or whomever.
All right.
Sorry, through the chair, I wasn't sure. So the 500-meter buffer was provided by the region's medical officer of health and the commissioner of health services as part of that process. So we deferred to their expertise from the public health perspective in terms of looking at those areas where we wanted to prevent the location from being identified. And when you compare the list of criteria we provided to other municipalities, ours was more robust and something that other municipalities actually gravitated towards having as robust of a list as we have. And in terms of, because it's purely simply a retail store, our bylaws are currently acceptable and there's no need to make adjustments to those things, so long as one of the things we identify, it's an interesting point in terms of if we were to proliferate and get 15 of these stores, would we need or require anything in place to ensure that they follow or adhere to these criteria in that 500-meter buffer moving forward? That's an interesting thing that we can take back and look at. But given the population and the number of stores that they're proposing over the next many years, our current zoning bylaw is adequate. The only areas that we would need to make any adjustments to would be in relation to the production aspect and ensuring that the industrial areas are adequate for that, as well as seeing where things go with respect to the cannabis lounges and the impact that would have from a building design perspective as well as a bylaw perspective. But until we know a little bit more as to what they want to do with those, because right now the answer is no, there's not going to be any of these smoking cannabis lounges. If they open that up and say that there will be, then we most definitely have to start working on making those adjustments in our zone.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much. So just for the information of council, I think there was a letter sent by the Ministry of Finance on November 28th, which I'm reading an article which the town of Richmond Hill received, and subsequently the mayor put a motion in, sending a letter back stating that Richmond Hill is not interested, and so their motion passed unanimously. So the actual 14 cities are Brampton, Hamilton, Kingston, Kitchener, London, Mississauga, Ottawa, Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, Thunder Bay, Toronto, Vaughan, and Windsor. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna receive the presentation. I think you're gonna put a motion up. So somebody wanna move receipt of the presentation? Councilor Bowman, all in favor? And there is some recommendations on the board. Do you want me to read it out, Peter? Or is it all right? Somebody wanna move the recommendations? Councilor Willens? All in favor? All opposed? That carries. So moving on, we are at, where are we at? 9.5. 9.25, report regarding dignitary gifts procedure for members of council and staff. Sorry, you have a question? Let's move it.
This is the report what Mayor Jeffrey spoke about? Yeah. Okay, good. Just want to be clear. Thanks.
Does anybody, any other questions? Anybody have comments or questions on it? Move it. Moved by Councilor Willens. All in favor? All opposed? That carries. So we're moving on to Councilor question period. Any councilors have any questions? None?
Councilor Moore's on the board.
Oh, Councilor Moore. Should look at the board. Councilor Moore.
Thank you. We're down at 9.5. I just have a quick question. Do our policies, whether it's somebody who has, is doing business with the city or has a contractual agreement with the city, do we have non-disparaging clauses in our contracts?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is not a standard practice, and it is something, however, which is under review in legal services with respect to certain types of contract. And it is a matter on which legal services expects to report back to council.
Great. I can understand that in the past, maybe it hasn't been something that municipalities have turned their mind to, but you know, I think with social media and the opportunities for people, you know, there's been a few incidents, I think, and maybe that's why legal's doing the review that I brought to your attention, where people have a contractual agreement with the city for, you know, whether that's if they're renting facilities or they another type of contract where they're providing a service, and you know, it's kind of like biting. It's not good business to bite the hand that feeds you to start with, but I'm glad that legal are looking into that. I think honestly that all municipalities at some point in time are going to have to contemplate how they protect the reputation of the municipality through such a clause. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, we will now proceed into, oh, sorry, 11.1, government relations. Oh, you're on.
There's just one item I really wanted to highlight. Come on.
Yeah.
I told everybody that I missed you. Through the chair, we all know that the regional council meeting for tomorrow, so we're going to provide you with has been allocated along these three streams, so we are looking, in particular, the green and community culture and recreation infrastructure. The next big piece for us is how these programs are going to be designed, because at the end of the day, as part of our advocacy and government relations program, is we really want to try to squeeze as much money out of the province and federal government as we can. So here's a really good opportunity for us to actually move forward and do that. On the public transit side, there's a little bit more details that have been developed. So I just really wanted to talk a little bit about public transit and what we know. So we know the total investment in Brampton transit system will be approximately $474 million. And the allocations, federal and provincial, that's what was allocated to us through the bilateral agreements. The municipal portion of $125 million, that's an approximate based on how the funding transit is going to be allocated. So there's two components to that. So it's 85% to support growth and 15% of rehabilitation. And the anticipated costs for both of those are slightly different. So it's a split of 40, 33, 27 for the growth-related projects, and then 50, 33, 17% for the city, for the rehabilitation. I put an asterisk around the base on 2015 ridership, because speaking to Alex and his team over the last couple of days, I think other transit systems are probably struggling with that as well, because they're using 2015 ridership data. So how does that affect, so then we started thinking, well, how does that actually affect the city of Brampton? Not only do we have a significant increase in ridership, but we also have a growing population. And not only is our transit system growing, it's growing by leaps and bounds a lot of other transit operators. So the 2015, using the 2015 data does hurt us. Staff has looked at how the province and federal governments have calculated and allocated the funding. So while there's always these small little nuances, we feel that over a 10-year, because those are 10-year funding streams, approximately about $30 million because of the federal and provincial portion, because of using 2015 data. And of course, that's just for the city of Brampton. If you extrapolate that, that'd be nationwide. But again, because of our significant growth, there is a negative impact for us. So in terms of trying to get ahead of this a little bit, we are very much appreciative of this funding. It's something that we've been asking for the province and federal government, is for a long-term commitment. We got that. But from a growing transit system perspective, we would like to see at least some consideration, and this will hopefully entail talking to the federal and provincial governments, is whether or not the city of Brampton is an outlier. There could be other transit systems that are growing, but not to probably our rate. So it's really to start having a conversation with the feds and provincial government that we need to address this shortfall in funding, or this negative impact based on using 2015 data. So to start the ball rolling, just some of the proposed advocacy, and again, if we can kind of move forward with this, we want to start now, not just next week or wait for AMO or FCM. I think we can start the conversations now, at least with the government. We really want the federal government and the provincial government to recognize not only do we have an increased ridership, but we also have an increase in rapidly growing population, so we have to work on that formula as well. And what we would like to do is start really, not that this would prohibit Alex or others to start those conversations with the province or federal government, but we really wanted to come in as one team, including getting council's endorsement, is really start having direct meetings with government officials to really articulate how this affects us. We want to leverage this upcoming 2018 provincial election to say, hey, by the way, not only are we growing, but we have significant and unique characteristics that is not cookie cutter across the province. And then obviously we really want to touch other opportunities as they arise. So I just thought that this was important, just to highlight that we're not just taking the province and federal announcement to face value. I think there's some other work that we can continue to do. I'll leave the deck on that just in the conscious of time, but today there is a provincial budget. If you kind of add up everything that's already been announced, $10 billion. As usual, we will be providing an update to this council as soon as we can kind of digest it and really break that down for what that means to us. At your reading pleasure, you can take a look at some of the updated information since my colleague, Jacqueline Fitzvitas, updated you on the provincial election. So in terms of, we have a new leader, we have a few new candidates. One candidate has actually been removed from the PC party, and there has been some interest in having, as we kind of mentioned and stressed, is Brampton is important for the next governing party, and we've already had a couple of leaders in Brampton. So, thank you.
Done? All right, Mayor Jeffrey.
So I wanted to go back to the transit piece and the infrastructure and the share that the city of Brampton will get. This has been a problem for us for decades. We have 71 days to tell the story. And by talking to other officials, it actually has absolutely no bearing on the decision-making going forward. So my suggestion is that we actually put out a press release to say that this is a strategy that we will be pursuing with all parties to get the fair share for Brampton. It's on every file, whether it's healthcare, education, transit, everything is based on population that is out of date, and it does hurt us, and we're always playing catch-up. So I honestly think that we should have our staff, you can prepare something, but that would be my suggestion. We should come out of this meeting today with something we put out maybe next week at council. I'll leave it to you as to what we should do, but at the end of the day, we are growing, and the trouble is the formulas are all based on numbers that are out of date. So I think that we should say this is very important to us. We are going to be talking with anybody who wants to represent this community about how they're going to fix it, because it's been a long-standing issue. So I wouldn't leave it. I think it's too important. We think we need to do it sooner, and to see if council's interested in pursuing that. Thank you.
Councilor Pleshy.
Thank you, Chair Dillon. 11.1-11. I guess there's many more campaign promises. One, I thought that I didn't hear it directly from the horse's mouth, and Andrea Horvath had, I guess, announced that she was going to scrap EQAO. Has anybody else heard that? It's the grade 3 testing that teachers need. Grade 3 and 7, yes, my apologies. Have we heard that?
So through you, Chair, I haven't personally, but part of our election strategy is actually going to be breaking down all the election platforms. So today is really the first one out of the gate, which is going to probably be the Liberals. And then we suspect that through the rhetoric after the election, we'll probably get a better sense of the PCs, NDP. So we'll do a fulsome analysis. Here is where the Liberals, NDP, PC, and perhaps even the Green Party stands on all those. I have not heard specifically the EQA scores.
And then 11.2-12. Recently nominated local candidates. On the Liberal Ontario side, I don't see Vic Dillon in there.
So through you to the Chair, as of yesterday, these are the officially nominated candidates. Right now, MPP Dillon has not been nominated. That doesn't mean that he's not going to be nominated. We just have not officially received his nomination. So we will continue to update this as we go along.
So to be nominated, but when you're when you're currently standing as an MPP, do you need to go through a nomination process? You do. Okay. So as of yesterday? As of yesterday,
through you, Chair, as of yesterday, these are the ones who have been nominated. The ones that are in color are new since we provided the update about a month ago. So just as an example, MPP Harinder Malley has got her nomination for Brampton Springdale.
Okay.
And again, we have to remember that there's also been new ridings, so some people are shifting to those who had like a split riding between Mississauga and Brampton. For example, MPP Mangat is running in Mississauga, so there's some shuffling that's currently occurring. But we'll continue to update council as we lead up to the election.
Perfect, thank you.
Lord, just one question from myself. How, in terms of the advocacy work that, if you go back to that slide, how informed are our MPs, and are you going to be going through them, or are you going to be going straight to, for example, the ministry?
Through you, are you meaning about the transit pieces?
Yes.
I think we'll probably, that's a good question. We'll probably be working probably two prongs. So one is through the elected side, and then the relationships that Alex and his team, as well as that we've established, will probably be doing the administration side. But to the point that was raised, I think politically we don't have as much runway, especially provincially. So we'll probably be getting something out to all our MPPs as well as our MPs. And then leading up to the 2018 election, as part of we do that education or that conversation, we want all candidates to really understand here's not just transit, but here is transit, so they actually really understand what our specific asks are. And now that we've received this funding announcement, it's It's welcome, it's needed, but again, I think there's some other ways that we need to articulate it to our MPPs, so we can start holding them to account on these issues. So,
And I've said it before, I think we need to send updates to them frequently, because a lot of the times I speak to them about things they're unaware. So I try to fill them in as much as I can, but if we have for example, a monthly update going to them, at least they know. But in particular to this type of advocacy, I think we definitely need to sit with them and let them know what's going on. So when they go to their meeting, speak to their caucus, they're able to convey Brampton's best interest. Sorry, Alex.
To Councillor Dillon, I think you specifically asked about MPs, and part of the CUDA, Canadian Urban Transit Association, we have the awareness days in Ottawa where we go out there and we advocate for specifically transit priorities. There's 3 across the nation that we do. This past year we did that with our MPs. I had the pleasure of meeting with several of them, along with some of my colleagues in the industry, and one of the advocacy items were around population and ridership, and that combination of how those monies are dispersed. And we're happy to see the federal government disperse it with a formula of 70 to 30. We did get hit provincially because it was distributed strictly solely on ridership, and that's the way the provincial body split it to the different municipalities. But that advocacy does take place for transit, and we do that yearly in Ottawa.
And in this specific case, but I'm speaking specifically to this as well.
Yes, so to the transit portion of this, we do advocate to our MPs on a yearly basis for transit.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. This was, what number was this? Move receipt. All in favor? Carries. All opposed? Nobody? Close the public question period. Anybody from the public have any questions? Hi, can you state your name?
Hello, my name is Sylvia. I'm a resident of Ward 3. One of the earlier ones was the youth charter, specifically focusing on transit. As you probably know, the majority of Brampton's median age is 36, 37, so much of Brampton is young. Car insurance is incredibly high, as you all know. For people who are under 25, car insurance is $500 a month. Even if you have a full license, a cheap car, and you've been driving for 3 or 4 years without an accident. As such, if you look at the ridership for Brampton Transit, it's mostly young people. One of the issues that I've talked to a lot of young people about is there's not very good coverage in the evenings and weekends for Sheridan College. Classes have been running later and later. It's common now for bachelor's programs to start at 7 o'clock, but bus service is winding down at 6. And for continuing education, as many young people in Brampton work, in addition to try to continue education, it's just not there for transit for them to be able to get to continuing education classes on the transit system. And I was wondering if the City Council had intended to have more funding for that, because I've looked at the budget for 2018, and once you subtract the increase in cost due to cap and trade for gas tax, and then also Presto taking a larger cut, in absolute funding, the City Council's funding for Brampton Transit has actually gone down in absolute terms, despite it going up, ridership going up massively. And as such, there's really not the money to allocate for that kind of stuff as of now.
So what was the question?
Does City Council intend to allocate more money for evenings and weekends, as a lot of young people in Brampton do shift work, which will sometimes end at 10 or 11 o'clock, but transit starts winding down at 9 o'clock.
Alex?
Absolutely, thank you. Through the chair, obviously the delegation is well informed on some of the nuances of our budget, but clearly this year council did approve, because of our increases in ridership, we did bring the council a 65,000 hour increase versus the initial, I believe it was around 40 something. So that will hopefully offset and allow us to provide later services to, i.e. Sheridan College, and that you'll probably see in September of this year as our major service changes are rolled out. On top of that, we're also working with Sheridan College, and our staff were at Sheridan talking to the student body last night for a potential UPass program shared between 3 parties, that is between Brampton, Mississauga, and Oakville. And we're hoping that's going to gain traction. So definitely the services that council approved in this budget this year will help in terms of providing later night service and other pressure points that we're experiencing in the city.
Thank you, City Council, for having already looked at this issue.
Thank you. Councilor Palacio.
Just on
No,
the
no.
item on the U-Pass. You mentioned it.
So unfortunately, it's not an opportunity for council to ask a question.
Challenge the chair.
Challenge me, challenge the clerk. So what we have now, so we're, closed session, so we're gonna be entering closed session where we will, be discussing 13.2, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land, and 13.3, subject matter related to the consideration of a request under MPIFA, and 13.1 was removed.
And through you, Mr. Chair, 13.4 was added to the agenda, which is litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, a litigation matter.
Right, so we're gonna be going to, closed session, and we'll take a 10-minute break. 15. 10. 10. All in favor? All right. Why not? So we're back from closed session, and just reporting back 13.2. Direction was given, 13.3 was acknowledged, and 13.4 there was no direction. And so, motion to adjourn? Councilor, what's your name again? Medeiros. All in favor? All opposed? Carries, adjourns. Actually, sorry, revote.